Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 172. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comics forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, Sensei of the Whatnot Stegall, and the Duke of You Know. This episode is going to be the first part of Superman for Tomorrow, one of our Rage of the Months that we've been talking about for quite some time that we're going to be chatting about. We're joined by Mandy Stegall, who does the Life in the Gutter columns over on RagingBullets.com. So if you haven't checked that out, please make sure to go do that. We hope you enjoy this first part of our exploration of that series. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InstockTrades.com, where you can pick up the DC Library, Shazam! The Monster Society of Evil. Written by Otto Binder, art and cover by C.C. Beck. At last, DC Comics collects the legendary serialized story from the pages of Captain Marvel Adventures 22 to 46, 1943 to 1945. The Big Red Cheese battles foe after foe as he inches his way towards the malevolent force behind it all. The 2-inch-long, super-intelligent worm known as Mr. Mind. That's 272 pages. It's regularly $39.99, 50% off only $19.99. That's great for anybody who's interested in classic stories. To pick up a hardcover for half price like that's a great deal. Thank you, DCBService.com, for continuing to support us with those pre-order deals. I also want to shout out InstockTrades.com, where you can pick up the DC Library Flash of Two Worlds hardcover if you missed that. The Speedsters of Two Worlds Race into Adventure in this new collection of tales. Learn how police scientist Barry Allen, Flash of the 1960s, first crossed paths with his predecessor Jay Garrick in this hardcover featuring Flash 123, 129, 137, 151, and 173. That's regularly $39.99. InstockTrades.com has it at 37% off, $25.19. Thank you, InstockTrades.com, for continuing to support us. Preacher will be up this week. I'm actually got some emails that I'm exchanging with them, and we're trying to set up a Preacher deal. That will be up this week. I will be happy to post something on the website as soon as that's up, and obviously on our next episode, I'll make an official announcement on what that's going to look like. That's going to be our next book of the month that we're going to be covering in September. So definitely check out Preacher when we do that. I remind everyone about comicsforesight.com. That's to help out John Ostrander. He's gone through a recent eye surgery, and this is a creator who is absolutely wonderful. He's touched so many characters from DC to Marvel to Dark Horse with Star Wars. He's doing wonderful comics over there for that. If you haven't checked out any of John Ostrander's work, I urge you to do so. But please help out this creator, comicsforesight.com. If you weren't able to be at the Chicago Comic-Con, Wizards Chicago Comic-Con, they are offering up donations that people can, and anything more than what they're looking to collect to help him out with his surgeries is going right to the Hero Initiative. Comics are a community effort now. This is something creators are reaching out to comics fans all the time by posting on forums, by coming on podcasts, going to conventions. So creators are doing what they can to contact us. We're in communication with them. It's really wonderful right now that comics aren't such an isolated thing. This is a chance for basically one of us to help out one of our own. So please consider donating to that if you haven't already. I think it's an awesome cause and urge everyone to please participate and donate in that. Speaking of Preacher, back when I was giving out clues for Preacher, we did have some winners of our contest, and I didn't ever announce on the show what everyone chose, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to show. Matt was one of our contest winners. He chose Batman Hush Volume 1, the trade paperback. Beth was one of our winners. She chose the Dr. 13 trade. Robert was one of our winners. He chose the Batman Blind Justice trade. And Deadpool from the forums chose Flash, which was Wade's run. It was Flash 95 to 100. That was donated by Unknown Fanboy Chad Burdett, actually. The other three trades were from me, but this one was donated by Unknown Fanboy Chad Burdett. So thank you, Chad, for donating those. That was really, really cool. And I'll do another contest sometime soon. It's probably something in league with when we're going to be deciding who our next contest winner is for after Preacher. When we do that, we'll have another contest winner that we pick. And maybe some of the people who have done things for the website and for the show and things like that will donate some prizes to at that point in time. Or I'll come up with another form of contest or something to do, because that was a lot of fun. And I want to thank those four for participating in that. Don't forget to check out RagingBullets.com, where you can get regular show news updates. It's every week at least once or twice a week. I'm always posting updates as far as what's going on with the upcoming episodes. There's also listener-produced columns. Life in the Gutter is a great example of a column that's updated regularly. There's also a wonderful backlog. If you click on the community content section, you're going to see sketches. You're going to see Where's What Not Now. You're going to see listener-produced reviews of comics, things like that. Anything that you want to click on there. Also, our forums. If you're somebody who doesn't like to join forums, remember that our forums, you can actually read what our listeners are talking about in the forums. Our listener rant section, which is really wonderful. There's great discussions about all the episodes that come up as well. So even if you're not a member of the forums, you can click on them and read what's going on in the forums. So I urge you to consider doing that, even if, because it's great to see the discussions and the topics. And a lot of times people will catch us in some things that we missed. And I always really enjoy, I try to give personal comments to as many posts as possible when there are comments about the specific episodes. But there's a lot of threads that are being started now, which I really appreciate the forum posters that are starting up their own threads with things that they're finding around the web that they're finding are interesting. So thank you for everyone who participates in the forum regularly, whether it's just checking it out and reading what's going on, or if you're more an active participant. Whatever you're doing there, I think it's great to see our forum community. I try also to post on Facebook and MySpace and Twitter and things like that, but the first place I always go to is our forum, because obviously it's our regular show forum, and our episode thread lists there as well. So definitely check and participate in that, and check out the website to see some of the listeners' thoughts on those columns and things. Remember, anything you do for the show, and this includes voicemails. You send in a voicemail, shoot me an email, and let me know you sent in a voicemail, because I'll put you in the contest as well. They all go towards a spot on the show, like Mandy earned. So would definitely love to have more people on the show. I want to keep rotating that to get as many people on during the year. My plan is to do that bi-monthly, to have listeners on bi-monthly. Those segments take a long time for us to produce, but they're well worth it. I think this For Tomorrow episode is a great example of that. So without further ado, Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in depth in plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Hello, Sean and Jim.
Finally, we're here for Tomorrow, Jim, and joining us is Mandy Stegall, Super Mandy from the forums, who does our column, Life in the Gutter. Mandy, welcome back to Raging Bullets.
Yes.
You know what, the first question I have for you, Mandy, before we even kick into the intro for this is, you picked this. This was, congratulations on the contest win, and thank you for joining us for this segment.
Yeah.
What made you decide to pick For Tomorrow? What drove this?
When you guys asked me first, ideally, I kind of wanted to do something with Renee. You guys know my love for Renee, but, obviously there's not a lot to pick from with her. I'm a Superman person, really. I am. I decided I was going through what I already had and decided that I was just going through and I was trying to, what have you guys not done yet? And what is maybe, old enough that, it'd be nice to maybe go back and revisit again. So came across For Tomorrow, and I thought, that's interesting. And it made me think about what led me to this story in the first place. I got to thinking about that, and I'm like, hey, what made me go search this out in the first place? And I remembered a line that is actually in the book, and the place that I saw this line was on a forum, on a message forum, and it was as someone's signature on there. And I thought, wow, why would that character say that? And in what situation were they in where, that character was driven to say that? So I did a lot of searching, and because I do that kind of thing, and, you see something like that and it just kind of grabs a hold of you, and you have to find out where it came from. So
who was the character?
It's Lois.
Okay.
And I don't want to say what exactly the line is. When we get to that point, I'll
just bring it up then.
I'll bring it up, but I think if I said it right now, it would probably spoil a little bit of the conversation. So, but I did a bunch of searching, and I think how I eventually figured out that it was this story was I was looking at something else. Don't ask me what it was, but I found the page like on Yahoo Images or something like that, and actually saw that. And I was like, oh, so that's what it's from. Went out and bought it the next day.
Now, what version do you have of this? Did you buy
I've got
it?
the trades, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did the trades have the 2-page origin of Superman in it?
I don't think so.
I have the absolute version in front of me, which is why I'm even asking that. And it just had in the beginning, I'll just talk about this really quick. It just had a quick 2-page origin by Azzarello, Lee, Williams, the whole creative team, basically.
Right.
Just doing a quick little overview of, just his origin. So it was kind of like those ones that were in the back of Countdown and the back of 52.
Right.
Those little, just 2 little pages. So it was just interesting artwork-wise to see that. But now, Jim, why don't you go ahead and delve into who the creative teams are?
Okay. First off, let's start with Superman for Tomorrow. The writer is Brian Azzarello. Pencils by Jim Lee. Inker Scott Williams. Colors by Alex Sinclair. Letterer Rob Lee and Nick J. Napoleon. I always mess his name up. Napolitano. Editors Eddie Braganza. Will Dennis. Assistant editor Cassie Seijas. Additional inkers are Richard Friend, Sandra Hope, Matt Benning, Eric Basaldua, Jim Lee, Danny Mickey, Trevor Scott, Tim Townsend, and Joe Weems. Superman, of course, is created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. It's funny you mentioned with the that 2-page story. You're saying it's not you're saying how it was a cool story, good artwork, but you didn't really think it had any bearing on the story. For me, when I read that, my first initial read through, I kind of agreed with you. Then when I read it through a second time, for me, it was a huge just connection to the whole story, because one of the main underlining critical themes in this trade is, what would you do to protect the ones you love? And just the way Clark's talking about his parents is like, every parent on Earth dreams about what their child will grow up to be. Mine were no different. They held me close, dreamt of a better life, and let me go. Their dreams. Did they dream of a place called the Heartland, and that their little boy would be lucky enough to find his place in it? Did they dream that under the light of Earth's yellow sun, their boy would grow to be faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and able to leap tall buildings in a single bound? Did they dream that their boy would grow to be a Superman? And I was just reading that, going on with that art. I was just like,
you misunderstood me, though. My point was, for people that read the trade, you didn't need to have that in order to understand the story. I'm not saying that thematically it isn't. I mean, thematically, a lot of what's going on in this story connects to a lot of Superman storytelling. You didn't need this, though, to understand the 12 issues that are contained within.
I will give you. But when you first said it, I kind of thought you were underpassing. I'm like, man, dude, you can't pass this up.
Yes, I understand that, but you got to remember, some of our listeners bought the trades, not the absolute.
I know.
So, and it's not in the trades.
Yeah.
Right. So my point was that they didn't need it.
Yeah, it's not a mission critical thing. You miss a key piece, but that I had to really talk about that because I just absolutely loved that opening.
It's gorgeous,
and that was just a beautiful, pull you in and just get you ready to rock and roll. Because, when
you've almost convinced me to buy the Absolute just to see that.
I tell you, I bought this Absolute solely on the Jim Lee arc, because I love Jim Lee, and I'm like, I gotta see this Superman story they did, and I just grabbed it. And then when I read the story, I was like, oh my god, this is a wonderful, wonderful Superman story. And I just completely was one of those things where I was so chomping at the bit to talk about this thing, and when Sean's like, hey, would you mind doing the lead on that? I'm like, okay, no problem, because I really just was going nuts. Every time we were getting ready to talk about it, I'm like, yeah, let's go. And no, we have a problem, and I can't do it. And it's funny, and I'm laughing because you guys kept saying, "Oh, what's Jim being all cryptic about with whether I'm like the story or not?" I never had any intention of being any type of cryptic initially. When Sean was talking about For Tomorrow, I was like, oh yeah, like that. And
that was not the way you said it, though.
Okay, in my mind.
You sound like Kool-Aid Man right now. And when you said it the first time around, you did not say that. It's like, oh yeah, here's the sensei. I expect you to burst through a wall right now. That was not how you said it.
In my mind, that's how I said it.
Uh-huh.
Okay? That's what I intended. And I was
Thank God I'm not in your head.
It's got to be a scary place to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. Yeah. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie to you, sometimes it is.
Well, going through and reading some of, just different people online and what they had to say about this story, I mean, it was very, underwhelming. And having gone through and read this story, I was like, really? is that what you got out of it?
You know what?
Because
I will say this. I'm probably different than both of you. You read this in trade the first time, right, Mandy?
yeah,
And Jim, you read this in the Absolute the first time?
Yeah.
Okay. My
That's the
first
only way I've
experience
read
with this was monthly. I actually read this when it came out.
okay.
I will say this. My memory of this, when I first read it the first time through, I remember saying the art was really great. The story was okay. I remember enjoying it, but I remembered being honestly underwhelmed reading For Tomorrow in a single monthly issues as it went through the year. I remembered enjoying it. I'm not saying it was bad. I just remembered it being a year that I enjoyed Superman. I do think it. I really wish this had been published as a mini series instead of in the main Superman book, because it is a story that seems to take place out of continuity.
Right.
I mean, it's got kind of its own little continuity, which there's nothing wrong with. It's as a contained Superman story to pick this up in the Absolute version. I remembered when you picked this, I read it like almost immediately and read it cover to cover, and I'm like, boy, I don't remember this being so enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I went through it, and I really had a good time with it. And it's actually a lot deeper, and I do think this story reads much better with all of the issues together in a bound volume or a bound couple of volumes as it is in the trades or hardcovers. I do think this story reads much better this way. I did read this again yesterday because I knew we were going to be starting to talk about this week. And I intended to read the first 6 issues, figuring that's probably where we'd get to in our first discussion. I read the whole thing. I sat down last night and I literally started with the intention of reading 6 and thinking to myself, I might not even get to that. I might just get to the first 4 issues and have to finish them up this morning. I read this till about 2:30 in the morning last night. I couldn't put it down. So that's now my third read through of this, and I want to read it again already because there's a lot of open-endedness to the way this story's written, and I think that this story reads better with repeated read-throughs where you really kind of delve into what they're doing. I understood a lot of the themes that were going on with Superman a lot better. And maybe I was dense the first time through that I read it, because I've got to be honest with you, when I read this in single monthly issues, it was, if you'd asked me how was For Tomorrow, I was like, the artwork was spectacular. The story was okay. Completely different now.
Yeah, there is a lot of ambiguity in places. You've got a lot of characters taking positions where, you don't think that that's where they would normally be. And I mean, I can see, I think the first time even when I read it the first time in trade, I mean, there were places where I had to go back and I'm like, wait a second, what did he just say there? Or what's going on here? I had to go back and just really digest it, maybe walk away from it a little while and come back to it and actually think about it. And I think that's part of the reason that the story has really stuck with me, and part of the reason that I ultimately decided to do it, choose it, was that it is something that sticks with you and makes you think on some deeper level, I guess.
100% agree with what you're saying about just how there was a deeper consciousness as I was reading this. One of the things I always do when I'm reading a title is I put myself, especially if it's a title I'm into, I put myself in the hero's position or in the supporting character's position and say, how would I deal with this circumstance? And throughout this, I found myself thinking, if I was Superman, what would I do? Or if I was Father Leone, what would I do? And it was just one of those things where I was really just going, wow. And it just got me, there were times I would put down the book and just start thinking. And part of it was, what if I had the powers of Superman? There's a couple of the issues where I'm thinking, what if I had Superman's powers at this point in time? What would I do? And I definitely found myself as thinking, like the father, just what would I do here? And there was some really just inner soul searching going on as I was reading this. This was it was a definite just wow moments.
It was different for me in my initial read-throughs of this, the first time through, and even the second time through. I found that Superman's behavior was, at first, and I don't feel this way now, but I did feel this way in the first and even the second read-through. I'm like, boy, Superman's behavior just seems off. But then, it was really, I think, after reading it through a second time and then going back through so soon and reading the third, having fresh in my head how this story ends and why it's playing out, and that this is taking place a year after these events have occurred. That there's this year that is not on the page. You get to see like little glimpses of it in the story, but how much has gone on during this year and how responsible he feels initially for not being there, but also you get the impression that subconsciously, I think he knew more subconsciously than even he realized about what was actually happening here. And his behavior started to make a lot more sense to me than it did then. It actually made a lot more sense in relation to Kingdom Come. And the Superman we kind of see there was a connection that I made with this story. That's why I'm saying I really kind of wish this was a story that was told as a miniseries initially. Yeah. Think it would have worked better in that case. It's not a knock. I really got to say, like I said last night, not because I had to do it for the show, I couldn't put this down last night.
Yeah, it's tough once you get into it.
Yeah, but that was not my experience initially. And I don't know how well this read for other people who are listening to this that maybe read this monthly like I did. To wait a year to complete this story and to read it in monthly segments, I don't know that you get the full grasp of it as you do sitting down in a couple of sittings and really delving into this story. It was interesting. I'd be curious to hear from listener voicemails maybe, because we're going to break this up. This is going to be more than one segment that we're going to do this in. If maybe people want to call in and what was their experience with For Tomorrow.
And you talked about how Superman seemed off. Mm-hmm. And I picked that up immediately. Mm-hmm. But
oh yeah, he's
as I found out what happened, that made me appreciate that writing even more. That this is not the same Superman I'm used to. This is not the bright blue Boy Scout. He's gone through certain events and he's gone through significant stuff in his life that has changed his outlook on life, changed how he looks at himself and how others see him. And I really just ate up that he had like an uncomfortableness with himself.
Yeah, once you realize that he's not off because Azzarello didn't know what he was doing.
Right.
But he's off because even though he's an alien, he's human. Something happened and like his whole existence is not there anymore, has no meaning. Then you're like, oh, so that's why he's off. Okay, I can see it now.
Superman 204, the cover. Oh, it's that iconic image of Superman, and it's a mirror image to the Batman image. Both of these have led to sculptures that were done as well. I mean, very iconic Jim Lee images, and I know my friend Chris Kendall. He bought both of these to have on either side of the Absolutes for his shelf setup because he wanted both statues there with it. And it's got to be a wonderful looking, Jim Lee's artwork is something that I happen to be a big fan of his art. And I think he really nailed the artwork in this series all the way through.
The issue opens up with just a really interesting inner dialogue. And the first time reading through it, I was remembering thinking that it was Superman saying it because it's a Superman title.
I thought so too. That first page could very easily be him.
I know. And it was like
that was done on purpose, though. It was supposed to tease it that, like, hey, we're getting Superman here.
Yeah.
And that was something I really digged when they kept doing that throughout the beginning of each issues and periodically throughout the issue. I'm thinking, okay, is this Superman? Oh, no, it's not Superman. Oh, is this Superman? No, it's not Superman. Oh, and I kept going back and forth trying to figure out, okay, is this Superman now? And it was a cool just teaser. And this was like, especially had me drawn in because it's like, it's not easy being me. I know that's a very selfish thing to say, but then I'm feeling selfish lately. And selfish is something I'm not allowed to be. People need me to be selfless, or they did need me once. And I was just like, oh, wow, what's up with Soup? And then we find out it's that Father Leone.
Did you guys notice in this artwork, though? And it is something that, I got to be honest, I didn't notice until my most recent read-through. The outlines.
Yes.
Right in the beginning.
I was just going to mention that last panel on that first page, that outline. I'm like, I'm with you. I didn't notice it until I started rereading this for, to record this. I have read it probably 3 or 4 times and didn't notice it. And I'm like, whoa, because I'm taking notes and I'm like, oh.
I wonder if the Sleeper posters, I don't know for sure. I wonder if they're a reference to the Wildstorm series of the same name. Because, being Jim Lee, I wonder if that wasn't...
The funny thing is, with me only reading the Absolute version, I picked up on the different outlines of the different people throughout the series, and that was something that really had me going, what's up with this? What's going on here?
So you noticed it in the first page?
Yeah, and I noticed it in the first page, and periodically there's a baseball sequence where you see it in the background, and there's a couple other times when throughout the story, before we find out the big what is this, we see these things, and that was something that just right from the beginning had me going, what's going on here? What's this? So
and Azzarello's using that in medias res technique, that the story's told. We pick up in the middle of the story, so really the big events already happened. I think it'd be very natural for somebody to say what's going on.
And it is an unfolding mystery for us. I really like that. Even as we meet this priest, he's at a point in his status quo where it's clear that he's having a crisis of faith or some sort of crisis in his life, because at first I was wondering, is it because of this event that they're alluding to, or is there something more going on with him? And I thought that was, in many ways, it made him a very human character to see that he had worries, he had those issues going along with him as well. I loved the dialogue. This was a character who immediately, right from the get-go, I will say this, that's been a consistency in all of my read-throughs. I've always liked this character.
Oh, yeah. I really like him, too. I mean, I find, just like you, from the moment he starts talking, you're like, okay, this is an interesting guy to follow. Like, what's really up with him? When we realize it's not Superman talking and that it's Daniel, it's the priest, he's very, I don't even know the word.
For me, he was a great gateway into the story, because I could very easily, we always talk, a lot of time on the show when we're talking Superman, how we love seeing the human side of Superman, seeing the man behind the cape, and Father was a great, just a nice guide into that, and also seeing how regular everyday people would see him, how it would take for them to get used to the presence of Superman, and just the dialogue from this first issue to the final issue between the two of them has dramatically changes, and it evolves into something that was just something really organic, and something I was just like, as I said, he was one of the people that I was thinking, what if I was him? What would I do? How would I handle this?
He's also a gateway for Superman.
Yeah.
It's funny you're mentioning gateways, because it does work both ways. Superman connects with this guy on a very deep level when he realizes that he, in many ways, has a lot in common with this guy, in the fact that Superman's having his own crisis of faith. And so they are connecting on a very deep level. They're two very different reasons why they're having the crisis of faith that they're having. And the type of faith crisis is even different. But it is something that he can relate to what the priest is going through on a very deep level, because he's going through something emotionally that's very similar.
And I liked how when he and Lupe were talking, Lieutenant Lupe, were talking about just what was going on. They're old friends, and they know each other so well. It's like that you can read an old friend like a book when you know something's going on. And he's been speaking, and she even says, you've been speaking to packed houses. And I know there are priests out there who would just kill to have a packed house, because one of the things about the calling is you want to spread the word of God. You want to be out there. You want to be the shepherd who guides his flock. And here he's getting his chance, but he's even like, he can't rejoice in it, because he knows, that it's a fear follows faith was a great line that he has about how, what is bringing them into church? Is it the inspiration of God? Is it the fear of the wrath of God? Is it the fear of the unknown? And he's, that's part of his, his conscience that he's dealing with it. He's got big issues on his own, but he's also has this. There's, should he be joyful that the people are coming to God and he has a chance to teach them and guide them? Or is he, looks at the reason they're coming to him? And is that causing him doubt? Is that causing him, is this a true faith? Is this a true coming?
That line that he says about it's not guilt by association, it's distrust by association. It shows that people right now, because of this event that's happened, he firmly believes that they don't trust him and they don't trust the church because of that. I loved that distinction that he was making. His dialogue with her really shows that's where a lot of his questions are coming from as well, because I think we see throughout this that he's questioning his own faith.
Well, and it's a natural thing. You think about it. You have this massive event, and you want to blame God, but you can't blame God because he's not right in front of you. So you blame his representative. It happens any type of business, any type of company out there where whoever's in front of you, that's who you blame. In banking, the teller line constantly gets berated by people who are mad at the bank for a service fee, or mad at the bank for rate changes, or something that teller has absolutely no control over whatsoever. They come in and yell at them. Gas stations. How many times are gas station attendants yelled and screamed at when the price of gas starts rising? That teller, the gas station attendant, has nothing to do with setting the prices. They just sit there and run a register and hope they don't get robbed. It's that simple. But they're the person in front of you. They're the person you're going to go after and yell at.
That's why I pay at the pump. I'm serious, because inevitably Murphy's Law, when you're not the type of person that will do that, you're going to get caught in line behind that person. Yeah. And they take forever.
And the funny thing is, I've done both those two jobs. That's why I was able to really associate with it, because You
were a gas station attendant?
Yeah, in college.
I didn't know that.
Clark gas station. I was Clark man.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Did you do that at your job?
What, Clark man?
Yeah.
No, for Halloween, though, I did.
You dressed up as Clark man?
Oh, yeah. I got the picture somewhere in my house of me dressed as Clark man.
No, you let people photograph you like that, huh?
Yes, I did, and I have a copy of it in my house hidden. That I won't give to you, and won't get scanned and put online, because none of my siblings have that picture. So, you're not getting.
So you think this is more embarrassing than Bridgeman?
Actually, no. Actually, Clarkman, it was a pretty cool looking costume, if I do say so myself.
Well, back to the story. Yeah. I'm having my own crisis of faith in you.
Justifiable.
I can't get over this artwork as I'm looking over the church sequences, though, especially the background details. I mean, it looks like a very majestic place. We were at a wedding in Maine. That was where I was on my vacation, and it was in a cathedral in Portland, Maine. It was absolutely stunning on the inside. I mean, you would think, like in Maine, would it be a hot and sticky day? It was incredibly hot and sticky. The humidity level was very high. But you get into this cathedral, and you forget all that to see that kind of structure and architecture, and it's something that we don't do anymore. That type of craftsmanship, though, the way that construction is nowadays, there's very few artisans that operate on that level anymore. It's part of the human strength, I think, the fact that we as people are able to do this type of thing, that we have an eye to create something as beautiful as this.
The ability is there.
Yeah, and I mean, that to me was something that grabbed me in this artwork, and I was just like, wow, these are structures that really exist, and the detail and the time that this had to have taken to draw.
Yes. I'm pretty sure that every city we went into at least one cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and they were all from the same time period, and they were all just very breathtaking, and you're like, wow, somebody spent a lot of time working on this and making it look this beautiful. And, of course, by the time that we got to Rome, it's like, okay, everything we saw up until this point, file it in a box and compare it to this, because St. Peter's is the end-all and be-all.
I have to go there. I'm planning on doing a trip there, because my brother is now stationed over in Italy, so I'm planning on trying to get multiple trips to Italy while he's over there, just because I gotta, it's everything, images, pictures, and whatnot that I've seen. I have to see it. I have to go there. I've never really had a strong desire to visit other countries. I'm happy with, being in America, but there's just something about old Catholic, Italian churches that I just want to go to, find a little small town and just a little church in there, and that'll probably be something that'll be breathtaking to see as well.
It is not just the figures in here, but the background details are just incredibly gorgeous in this piece.
One of the things I liked about the church sequences, you have the initial pages going on between the two of them talking. You got the great close-ups, really bright faces, and just warm, wonderful. And then as the conversation situation slowly ending, he's starting to shift back into the shadows. He's got the shadows covering over his eyes, and there's just this dark, ominous type mood coming up. And that's something that constantly throughout this series, you have this shift between light and dark, and just, it was setting the mood music for me, and I really just digged how that flowed right up to the arrival of Clark, and we get a classic entrance.
Can I say something about that? Because you're making an excellent point there. I do like that when you say he went back into the shadows. I like, though, that it wasn't that he stayed in the shadows even throughout that sequence. Because you see this bit where he's getting really kind of dark and introspective. It was a very dark moment. But then there's this moment where she says that I cried when I realized that. And he comes back with, you cried? He's having this brighter connection with her, and he's back in the light again. It is interesting how he kind of weaves in and out of it, even within a single sequence. It isn't as simple as a shift down into darkness for him. He's never at any point in time, do I feel, totally in the dark until much later in the book. I do like that there's that constant with him.
It's a roller coaster. It's the roller coaster of human emotion. It's what we deal with every single day of our lives.
Because this is a priest who just has admitted that if he could, he would take back his vows.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean,
there's definitely a past between those two characters, and because I think at one point, he calls her baby, and he's like, "Hey, you haven't called me that in 15 years," and right before, and I'd take him back if I could, and
I'm guessing that there was
a romantic
relationship between the two of them.
And that definitely was a plus breaker. Friendship. Yeah, that was a friendship plus type thing going on. But just the entrance of Clark. This is a classic, Superman. The shadow on the one panel, then he turns and sees the bright light behind Clark as he's hovering in the air, and it was just full page spread. I sat there and I stared at this picture for minutes, just going,
very Christ-like.
Oh, yeah. Well, they constantly throw that theme
out
this. And that was something, as religious as I am, I really appreciate when writers will use that.
What worked for me so well on that, and I totally agree with both of you 110%, this is where I loved the way Superman reacted to that in every instance.
Yeah.
He was very well aware that he gave off that particular thing, and even when the priest is kneeling down, going, oh my, I don't think you want to do that. He does that throughout. There's a sequence later that we'll talk about. I think it's in the second set of 6 issues where there's other references like that where he really goes out of his way to. I love that Superman is respectful of different faiths and that he's not trying to dispel them, dispute them. He actually tries to respect all of Earth's cultures, which has got to be very hard to do in his position, because he could very easily start a cult.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Could be the ultimate David Koresh of the DC universe if he wanted to be.
But there are people
make the Hall of Justice a compound.
Yeah. Well, there are people in the real world who would who would follow a Superman cult. Let's be honest here.
Which I think is silly, because there should be a Hawkman one. Plus, he's dead and he's risen. Multiple times.
Okay.
Superman's done it once.
You only need once, baby. You only need once.
But
and for the deeply religious offended by these comments, we do apologize.
Being serious and honest, though, I really liked, because of the fact that you're dealing with a priest here, they took the opportunities to show how Superman would react to a priest who obviously is having, like Superman could have been right here, pushing him over the edge in his crisis of faith. Even so, he's very respectful of this guy. And this is a guy who right now could easily, use this as a reason to walk away.
Yeah. And the shock and awe on his face, I love seeing that in people when they first see him. And even that whole thing, Clark just looks at him and goes, "Why am I here?" He's like, "You can read minds too?" I cracked up. That was just a wonderful, wonderful sequence. Just a great way to introduce these two, a nice kind of, it's, as we said, he's being respectful to the priest, saying, "I don't think you want to do that," as he's kneeling in front of him, and then it leads right into that comedy. That was just a great intro and beginning of what's going to be a cool relationship we're going to see develop between these two. Now, the dialogue for me, between the two of them was a cool thing, because for me, it made Clark seem a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more human in this. And we talked about how the priest was shifting in and out of the shadows and the light as he's talking to Lieutenant Lupe. Clark does that throughout these sequences as they're in the various parts of the church. And that was something that I was like, wow, I'm not used to seeing Clark in the shadows. I'm used to seeing Clark bright, and he's the big blue Boy Scout. That caught me off guard. And first read through, and that's something that a continuing theme throughout this for me, is that Clark's in the shadow a lot more in this. And it explains, based on everything that's happened to him, based on as we slowly spell out what happened a year ago and how Clark reacted to certain things.
What bothered me the first time through reading this, and it is something that even in my second read through I still had a little bit of trouble with, Clark is a little manipulative in these sequences. At least in the way that, he's presenting himself to the priest, and the way he's trying to even the way he's trying to figure out whether or not he can trust this guy. And I was like, wow, it's almost like he's inhuman at this point. As the story goes on, you start to realize that he's disconnected from his humanity, almost like he's forcing himself away from his humanity, kind of like what we saw in Kingdom Come, because it's for very similar reasons. Lois. Yeah. Is the key to all this. And I was kind of like, should I dance around this or should I just reveal it? We have to talk about that, because what turned me over the edge here, and why I actually really enjoyed this sequence and connected with Kingdom Come, is when you read this through the first time and you realize that Lois, being a part of this event that's happened and not being there, has in many ways set him on this path and put him in this mindset. It's the loss of this love that has made him almost question everything.
Who he is. Yeah. It's questioning him. And I liked how when they're going back and forth about reading the minds, and Clark's like, no, I can read people's facial expressions. And I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense. But then as he continues on with that, about how he's been seeing fear in a lot of people's faces, and it's in faces of people who shouldn't be afraid of him. And I was just like, who is afraid of Superman? What's going on? And then, it's just that whole staying in and out of the dark. I
don't think that was just in reference to the last year. I think that's always been in reference to his entire life. That he sees fear in the faces oftentimes that he doesn't want to see, because people are in shock and awe. I mean, let's be honest. If we were sitting down on the street right now and we heard about a flying man, if he comes flying down to your neighborhood and lifts up a telephone pole and throws things around and stuff like that, fighting a bad guy, you're going to question your own safety. Who wouldn't? I mean, Think about what happens in this world. These people pick up objects that no
one should be able to pick up.
And in many cases, most machinery is not able to. Yeah. And they do it with ease, like it's a toothpick. And that is something that would cause fear in others. I think, we're used to seeing Superman with people who know him intimately, like your Jimmy Olsen, your Lois Lane, and things like that. And it's great to see Clark talk about that's, I'll run into strangers at times, and these are people who have nothing to fear from me. They're just good people. Or just it doesn't even have to be good people. They can be just average people, who can make mistakes or good or bad, whatever, have nothing to fear Superman, though, and yet they do fear him at that point. I liked that inner dialogue from him.
And it was funny because you said that he was being manipulative. And I do agree. There was some manipulative. That was something that I really digged, especially, but not just from Clark, because you see Clark's talking about how, about being he's the keeper of secrets and other people's secrets. And the priest, you immediately see him go on the defensive, saying, hey, these are private matters and, confessional. I can't reveal them even to you. And I liked how he went from being in shock and awe to defending his faith and his beliefs. And that, for me, that is a true, solid priest. And I love when I see priests being written that way. It's the protection of the sanctity of confessional. And that, I ate that up because, one, it was cool seeing Clark be a little bit testing him, seeing, can I trust this guy? This is a priest, yes, but can I trust him? And seeing the priest stand up to him, that for me was the selling point.
Even 2 pages ago when he says, I'm questioning my faith, when asked about, hey, you've got secrets, and he's, yeah, but I can't tell you. Even though he was questioning his faith, a couple pages ago. When something like that is brought upon him, he says, no, absolutely not.
It's the strength of his character that, for me, really shined on in that moment. And that was something that I ate it up. And I love seeing that portrayal of him as this for me is a true man of God. This is somebody who took up the call. And earlier he was saying he was questioning his faith. He was questioning why he did the vows, but we still see why he did his vows, why he is who he is, because this is his calling.
What really struck me as curious, you made the comment that you liked the fact that Clark was being manipulative. What do you mean by that? I'm just curious because is that something you see that's a trait of Superman normally?
No.
So why were you? I'm not disputing you in any way, shape, or form. I think these are things, though, in this story when you talk about there's people who love the story, there's people who don't like the story, there's people who kind of fall somewhere in the middle. I do think it's elements like these particular moments that would make people question this story. I agree with you, but to me it's the events that are leading him to behave this way that is working for me. What is it for you? I'm curious.
It was once I realized what he was doing, why he was saying it, why he was being a little bit manipulative.
Were you okay with that initially?
Yeah, initial read-through, because the one thing I did notice was when he's initially being a manipulative, you see more of a heavy shadow on his face. Then once the priest realized that Clark is there for confessional to him, things brighten up again. And it's like, oh, okay, Clark's not being a villain. He's not going to try to force me. Oh, okay, this is his deal.
So you were okay because the end result is Clark wants to know whether or not it's safe for him to open up to this man?
Right.
Okay.
And we saw it right away, so I was happy with that.
Because he's testing them.
Right. And then later on, when we see the events he's gone through this past year, that really just added, my enjoyment of that sequence, remembering, oh, okay, yeah, there's even explains more of why Clark's a little bit distant, why he's not Clark, why he's not being his regular Kansas farm boy. I
guess that was the part for me that at first I had trouble with, because I'm used to Clark being more forthcoming and open and more of a brighter force. In this case, to see him so more withdrawn like this was what took me by shock at first. I agree with you. I like it, but it was something that I think was a little bit jarring at first, was to see a Clark in this state. It's a very good storytelling tool in this case that I think works, but it took me a while to get used to.
It was funny, as I was reading this, I was thinking, a lot of times I was thinking, what would I do if I was the priest? And I know there's no way Clark would have done confessional to me, because if Superman swooped into my church, I would be like, hey, can I get your autograph? Hey, can we do a picture? I would have been fanboy geek, just geeking out seeing Superman there, and there's no way he'd be like, I'm not trusting this idiot.
He would have been thinking, oh, this dude's thinking he can't wait to tell Norge what I just told him. Priest realizes what he's doing. We see him kind of slump down in the chair. And just visually how this goes on, like he's trying to think about, because it is an overwhelming responsibility to hear this man's confession.
You think about because you can mention Kingdom Come. Who's the one minister from Kingdom Come? What's his name?
The
main narrator. The main narrator.
Well, that's what it is.
Is it Norman or something?
Norman, yes, you're right. Absolutely.
Yes. Yay for me.
Yeah. Because seeing him when he's dealing with the mega powers, and when in the present day Action Comics story, or was it JSA, when the Other Earth Superman came to our Earth and was dealing with the JSA, he seeked out he seeked out Norman, and we saw that with Norman dealing with that and trying to get the groove going. So I love seeing that, just that initial reaction, just that whoa, and then, but especially with the religious people, you have a job to do. This is something, and you see him kick in the mode. It's like, okay, I'm on the clock now. It's God time. Let's do this. And I like seeing him get more, getting a little bit more reflective, listening, paying attention. That's one of the key things to being a guidance, to being a counselor, to being someone that people will trust. You have to be able to listen to them. You have to understand and take in what they're saying. And I ate that up. I really the characterization of him, for me, was just a wonderful characterization of a man of God.
I like the priest because of what he's going through right now with his own questions as far as his congregation and how they're reacting to him and to God in general. I asked the question of Superman right away, why did it happen? Where was he during all this? Almost because he's probably asking that same question of God. like, where were you during these
Yeah.
disappearances?
Where were
You know,
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I liked that was probably something that, now he has the opportunity to ask this question to somebody tangible. Because I get the feeling that this guy has been asking this question in prayer. So now he's asking it of Superman, and Superman, basically it looks like Superman's feeling guilt. Not looks like, we know Superman's feeling guilt because he
He
wasn't there.
wasn't. Yep.
Because of his Trinity. Superman,
Help me,
save me.
save me,
Superman,
save me.
Superman, save me.
Yeah, which reoccurs throughout this story, that Superman save me theme, that it's something that he's drawn to. And it made me think, Superman's really never off the clock.
No, and it was the cool sequence where they're talking about how he was off world helping out Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, and it was just this cool thing where he's sitting there explaining how I wasn't here, I had to go out there, I had to help out Kyle, and you see him kind of, in a way, I would say he's a little bit on the desperate side trying to explain why he wasn't there. But even as I was reading, wow, this is a cool thing. You had these great visual stuff of Clark in this other universe, in this other galaxy, and he, helping out Kyle and just dealing with that whole stuff. But that even this great, what could have been probably a really cool story, is just a small side blip. Is basically just the introduction of this.
But there's even regret there. This alludes to an interesting fact that he's still dancing around at this point. Because he says, when I heard them, I was in bed. And
You sleep?
he says, yeah, he asks the question, you sleep? And he never says yes or no. He just comes back with, I was in bed, which we all know means he was there with Lois. Yeah. And I think he's clear that he's alluding to this fact that, no, I wasn't asleep. I was there with my wife. It is interesting to see this man and just how difficult that must have been. Because the last person he was with was Lois.
Yeah.
Then he went out to this place, and he came back, and his whole world changed.
Yeah,
It's gone.
We always talk about how with the super hearing, how cool his super hearing is. And as he's saying, as he's coming back into the atmosphere, he started listening, and it was a story on every major news across the world. And he was saying that he was hearing, of course, he was hearing about the great vanishing of, millions of people disappearing in a single instant. But I loved how he was talking about, it's not what I was hearing, it's what I wasn't hearing. And I love the fact that this Superman keeps a constant ear. No matter how much he's listening to, he's still always listening for Lois. He's always listening for his ma and pa. He's always listening for those he loves around him. And just to see him make that initial distinction was a really cool thing.
I also think his concept of space and the beauty of space was very cool in that one sequence where there was a 2-page spread of him amongst the stars with the alien ships. And I really liked how detailed that was, because it did look very cool and breathtaking. It also looked very alien. I liked that they weren't like traditional ships like you're used to seeing in, a lot of your sci-fi movies and all that tend to mimic ships. I was thinking back to early Battlestar Galactica, where the ships looked like almost like airplanes. Star Wars, the X-wing, things like that. They look like ships that were very comfortable. Star destroyers, they look like ships that we're very comfortable seeing. Nothing wrong with that. It would make sense that as humans we would craft our outer spacecraft as things that would work on a planet with gravity, because that's what we're used to. But in this case, aliens who maybe come from a different gravity set, come from different atmospheres, come from different worlds, would craft their crafts differently. And I love that these things don't look like your traditional atmospheric crafts. They're just like, the one thing's like a ball.
Yeah, they're just blobs of matter.
Kind of like the Borg ships.
Yeah,
when you're talking about that, they're not aerodynamic, so to speak, because they don't need to be.
In space, you don't need that,
right?
And it's yeah.
So I liked the creation of that particularly, but also that he told the priest, if you have the opportunity to go out in space, you should, because it's breathtaking and gorgeous. When you're talking about when he came back in the atmosphere, about the fact that every signal in every language is reporting the exact same thing. It let us, as the readers, know right away this was not something that just happened in Metropolis. This happened all over the world.
It's funny. Because as we're finding out the great vanishing of 1 million people disappearing, the first thought that popped in my head was, if I was going through that, the first thought would of course be the rapture, end of days, and that's one of the things that draws all the people to the church. And that's the fear of it. I was laughing because I'm thinking, man, if you ever deal with that, if you ever experience with that, and you're not the one who leaves, who's not vanished, you're like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Why didn't I get chosen by God? Why? What part of my life wasn't how it was supposed to be? And
you butchered a Stones song.
It could be. I butchered Michael Jackson's song. I've butchered a lot of songs.
I can tell you right now.
Oh gosh.
Well, the Stones do. Hey, get off of my cloud. So
if we died at the same time, I'd be running ahead of you to say, send this dude to purgatory. You know what he did to Paint It Black?
Hey, Paint It Black I thought was good. And I've had I've had a lot of compliments on that.
It's rare that you see terror on Superman's face. And that bit that you're talking about with Lois when he discovers that, you see it's horror.
Oh, God, yeah. And that was, really just synced in the powerfulness of that moment. Because you're like, he looked
everywhere.
Twice. Yeah. Oh, that was a...
But it was still no rhythm, no heartbeat, none.
My wife.
And that panel's black.
It was visually a wonderful sequence. I love the blur when he's flying, too, to show just how fast he is going.
Yeah.
Wally West and Linda Park, the best stories with them have always featured how integral she is to him to tether him to Earth. That pulled him back from the Speed Force. Something that was supposed to, you're not supposed to be able to come out of when it calls to you, when it pulls you in. And at the time when those stories were going on, that was what pulled Barry Allen in, and Barry never came back out. So for Wally to be able to latch on to Linda and be pulled out, it is interesting that Superman has the same tether. It is a comfort to him, almost a focus, because I love that you've seen in movies, Superman Returns did this kind of well, where he was up in the sky and you just got this, when he flew up there, you could see that he heard everything going on around him.
Oh yeah, that was a great visual.
Yeah, and I loved that focus that came from that film, because you got an idea of just how much stimulus this man has, and to be able to have things to focus on, like a certain heartbeat. You mentioned Jonathan and Martha as well. That would be comforting for him to be able to have those things when he's trying to, because you almost need to focus on something in order to then
not go insane.
Yeah.
Just hear.
But also,
everything.
You'd have to learn how to be able to pick out specific people, specific details. Because you're right, you'd have to tune out everything else.
Well, if you remember from the Green Arrow story, when Connor first got shot, and Clark was able to hear him yell Clark, not just because it was Green Arrow saying it. It was him using a tone of voice that he had never heard him say it in. It was that pure panic and terror in his voice as he's calling for Clark. It was that distinction in his voice that drew Clark to him and let Clark know, I got to go now. And I thought that, it's the same type of deal with that. That was just a coolness. And the funny thing is, this could have been a wonderful ending where you're showing him with the vanishing and all that, but that technically wasn't even the true ending of this. It continues on as Clark and Clark
Leone.
and Leon. Thank you, Father Leone are talking, and he's sitting there saying how his sin, the thing that Clark is guilty about, is his sin was to save the world. And for me, that was a huge moment because I'm like, what the heck did Clark do here? What's going on here? If he's not really feeling guilty, if he's not feeling this, seeing the fear in people's eyes over this event, if there's something else that occurred after this, what the heck happened to Clark? And that for me was just a great cliffhanger ending that had me wondering and chomping at the bit.
And I think it has a lot of meanings, because Clark is questioning himself throughout this story and his role. Is he even human? Because he questions his humanity multiple times later on when he talks about can't generate tears and things like that. I mean, it is interesting for him to be, and there's certain actions in other countries that we're going to talk about where he starts to question, did I even do any good? Looking at that church segment, that was another one on the bench there. You see another outline to see one of the parishioners disappeared. Was it during a mass?
Probably.
Was the person just there praying? That's got to be a question, because if that person vanished during a mass, that adds more reason why he would be having trouble connecting with his parish, or why his parish might be afraid being there, being
Because
like
that's supposed to be
safe place.
Yeah.
And now that safety's no longer there. So that was, to me, it's such a small panel, but so pivotal to explain what's going on in his own parish.
Yeah, and it's funny because, with me thinking about the whole rapture thing, you would think people who regularly go to church, who would regularly do that, would all vanish. So if there was a mass going on when the vanishing happened, on the faith side, the rapture, end of days type thing, you would think all of those people would have been gone, because these are your devout religious people. So that would really have me questioning. If I was sitting there and someone vanished and I didn't, first thought in my head, of course, is rapture. I'm like, okay, what's different about her than me? Why did they go and I didn't?
Or am I next?
Yeah, well,
no, but he talks about the fear when people come there. Are they coming because of fear? Are they becoming because of distrust? I think I think you're 100% correct, but I think that there's a lot going on. And I think that if you go down a whole pew, you're going to have people in very different places as far as what they're thinking right now. And you are going to have some people who are saying, am I next?
Yeah.
Is that why they're coming back?
Happened once. What's going to stop it from happening again?
Sure. And could it be me next? What was,
right.
And especially, imagine if they know that person and they say, geez, that person was a much better person than me. Because we don't know, that person could be the nicest person in the parish. Yeah. So then you got to question, why her? It's interesting to see that whole bit. I do love when this shift to the whiteness, when he talks about my sin was to save the world, the white background, the plain white there. It was an excellent cliffhanger.
Nothing like the handy-dandy electro-claw for carving through metal doors.
I just chopped this up into segments, mainly because of the way, when I edited it, I took out segments there, and it looked like a nice little breaking point to kind of jump back into the discussion. We kick off here with issue 205 of Superman 4 tomorrow.
Once again, this issue starts off, and we have this inner dialogue, and, of course, initially I am kind of thinking, is this Clark again, or is this somebody else? And we see this cool fight sequence of this giant, alien monster type super bad creature coming down. Of course, Superman's flying in a safe, and the inner dialogue is this sweet old lady who works at this diner, and she's saying how Superman saved her, how he was there, and she's even talking about how he was there for her, and she knows he wasn't just there for her, but it felt like that. And you see this,
like she was the most important thing in the world. That 2-page spread where she says at the end of me, the most important thing in the world, you would feel that way, being the only person there, and this godlike man with these powers, anyone would feel that. I mean, why did he save me?
Yeah, and I like the fact that she's beaming just with this, positive love for Clark when we know he's having these doubts. We know he's seeing people are afraid of him. This is a lady who's not afraid of him. This is a lady who thanked God for Superman, and she was glad he was there. And I like just that contrast, knowing what Clark is going through, the inner struggle he's going through, to still see these people who are like, thank you, Superman. Thank you for doing this. You're amazing. And just, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I kind of wish Clark could hear that a little bit more. But it was interesting to see that it was Father Leone who was in the restaurant. He's finishing up his dinner or his lunch or breakfast or whatever he was eating, and he was hearing her relate the story about Superman, knowing his, starting his connection, his crisis of faith. He's still seeing this person who still has this faith, still has this belief in something more powerful, but this belief of Superman that there is this massive force of good out there. And
Superman asks a question later, and I know I'm jumping ahead of this, but he asks the question, are we any better off than we were a year ago? Is the world any better? And you know what? Well, for her, it is.
It is. He asked that back in the first issue, too, doesn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says, I think it's worse.
That is interesting, that theme, is anything better. And I know he's talking about the bigger picture, but I do think little things which to him it is like a little thing, but those things, he changed her life for the better. And what does she go on to do just from that pivotal moment? It does show how tiny events cause ripples, because he does show a ripple later on. But that tiny moment where he does that for her, he has improved her life and the life of those that come into contact with her. even just having conversations with her around the table, how many people that day had a better day, influenced somebody else in a better way, just from that one person who he saved, and how he changed her life and her motivation. Very cool. We were talking about Father Leone. When he goes to that gravesite, the connection that I made with this last night when I was reading it, the outline of the little girl.
Yeah.
The most heart-wrenching of the disappearances, for me, at least the one that I saw, I'm like, whoa. But also it made me question, after he talks to her, he goes to that stand. Was that girl somehow connected to that family? Was that their daughter? Is that why they're still having a crisis? It's a very religious moment. And is that why they're having such trouble now going to?
I was thinking it could be that, or the other thing I was thinking, because he was saying how his son was having faith issues.
Right.
And if you're dealing with, assume this is a religious family dealing with the fact that it's the rapture. Okay, why didn't the priest go? What's wrong with the priest? With all these stories of the kid toucher priests out there, first thought that would pop in my head, if I still saw a priest in church, I'm like, why didn't he go? What's he still? Is he one of those kid touchers? Is he? And I hate to say that, I would immediately start being suspicious, and I would start looking at the darker side of humanity. But I would think that I would why is he here? What did he do wrong that makes him still here? And I kind of took that could be where the kid's getting his crisis of faith from, and why the kid doesn't want to go into the church.
Also, the family. See, I think part of the reason why I think it might be that little girl, what did they have to tell the son about the daughter disappearing? Because if you take a look at where the daughter's grave is, the cross there and everything like that, it was obviously a religious family for the daughter.
Yeah.
So I couldn't help but look at that and wonder,
is it them?
Because timing-wise, for him to go to that gravesite and then go to him, it just seemed to me almost like it couldn't be a one-off. I might be reading too much into it. It just...
Well, even the guy at the stand, the owner, he's pretty looks kind of jovial, until they bring up this issue, and then he's like, he's not sick, is he? No. And his whole tone changes because he's like, now we got to talk about this. So I didn't pick up on that before. I think you guys are right, though, that that little girl probably is connected to that.
I don't know. It was interesting.
Just a guess, but
or she could have led to him saying, "Okay, this is one of the children from my parish.
Right.
Let me check on another one who I'm not seeing anymore. Make sure I'm staying in connection with them." Just to see his frustration, though, I do like seeing. See, to me, I think a lot of times, and I feel bad for priests because I do feel like at any religious figure who a lot of times you have a certain state, because you have such a state of behavior, a lot of times you can't be human and you can't vent and you can't let out. And to me, I think one of the things that I like about him and that I find so charming about him is the fact that I totally believe that he respects his role. He respects his standing as a priest, what the appearance he puts off to people. But I like that he's human because I feel like, wow, I can connect with this guy. He has these beliefs. He took these vows. He takes them seriously. He says he wishes he could take them back, but not that he would violate them. That is an interesting, even when Superman comes and questions, he's having this crisis of faith, but he will not violate them. He's still honoring, and I totally feel that if this guy left the priesthood, which he kind of, they kind of heads sort of in that direction, but I totally believe that no matter what, he would never reveal any of that information.
No, definitely not. And it's funny because when I see him and I was reading the story, I immediately started thinking about some of the younger priests that I've had to deal with. We had Father Tim at St. William. I had Father Herb in St. Thomas More when I was in BG. And these are, you figure in your head, you think priest, you think usually an older guy, white hair kind of thing. These are young people, and it was kind of the way they would connect with the kids. Like Father Herb in BG, he used to go to the Bowling Green, the BGSU hockey game. So I used to see my priest sitting at the hockey game, beating on the glass, going, getting into getting into the game. And that was, for me, was always a cool thing. And I didn't know how to address him when I saw him at the games. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Because I didn't know if I should call him Father, if I should call him Herb, or how should I do it? And it was, I could see him being the exact same type of person.
He's wearing an I'm with stupid shirt.
Yeah.
The shirt that he's wearing is "I'm with stupid." I mean, it's in multiple panels. It's pointing at the guy next to him.
And that's not a very,
including the vendor when he walked up to him. Because our first panel, when we see him walk up to that vendor, it's pointing at him.
He's had insult to injury to that guy. Way to go! Yeah. All right,
calling me stupid.
Yeah.
Why? Yes.
I'm looking at any of the panels to see if it's pointing at Superman that way, and it isn't.
Because he's smart.
Yeah.
It doesn't magically. The finger doesn't magically change direction, does it?
No. He just
keep
never
from doing that.
He's never, except this segment he would be sort of pointing that way. I Superman catching, and tell me you guys didn't see that coming when he threw that.
Oh yeah, because he's just so angry and it's build up, and I like how it was
and he's getting ready to throw out the Queen Mother right there.
Oh, yeah, but it was a build-up over a multiple page, and as he was with his parishioner who's having these crucifixes, who's not going to be coming back to the church probably, he didn't let it show. He's like, "Oh, I understand. Yeah, take your time," and he's still being that good priest. He didn't cut into the guy. He didn't think, and he took it away. He bottled his anger, but you could see it slowly building, and finally he's just like, "God!" As he hurls the peach, boom! You see the one-hand catch. I was like, "Yeah."
When I first read this story, I kept wondering, why aren't we seeing Jimmy? Why aren't we seeing Perry? Why aren't we seeing those characters? And it wasn't until later when we find out who's with Lois that it dawned on me completely why we weren't seeing those characters.
Yeah.
Superman could have technically gone to Jimmy Olsen and talked to him, but it is that I think that humanity disconnect that he almost needed to talk to someone who would be more objective. And he couldn't be as open with Jimmy, I don't think, as he could with this priest. He needed someone who would never talk about it again in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think considering that Lois is gone, I think that it would have been really difficult for him as far as being reminded on a daily basis. If you did go in and you saw Perry and you saw Jimmy and Cat Grant or whoever, that it's like, oh, Lois used to, and you keep beating yourself up over that.
Well, he couldn't, though. He couldn't go into the Daily Planet as Clark because Clark is with them, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why
I mean, even
they explained. I like that they explained why we don't see Daily Planet sequences in this.
Right. And for me, I actually kind of also was thinking he is running away a lot from his emotion. He's the workaholic who's burying himself in his work,
and that's what I think. That's what she's hitting on as well. Let me keep away from the people that reminders and things like that. I do agree with that, but I like that there was a definite explanation as to why we weren't seeing him in his civilian identity, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. Beyond,
I was just trying to hit on the point that even if like Jimmy's hitting that signal watch like crazy and trying to find out what's going on, probably even if we don't see it, I mean that's going to start bringing up issues of him thinking about Lois and just going to make him beat himself up even more.
It's going to force him to confront his emotions, and,
right? And he doesn't want to do that,
right? Yeah.
I think he would have reacted to the signal watch as far as saving Jimmy, doing the Superman save me thing, but there wouldn't have been a personal moment. He wouldn't have taken him to like the side and how are you doing, and he wouldn't have had small talk, or chat or anything like that. Anything that would have been considered like a personal discussion.
Been like, hey, nice seeing you. See you next time. Bye.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let that go, that you completely combined chat and talk and said a small chalk. I'm just going to let that slide and not even mention it. Now, I liked how when he catches the peach, they continue on with the story, and so I was laughing because as he's eating it, I'm like, hey, you got to give him some for the effort? Because that did cost him money. You going to chip in a little coinage there, or are you just going to eat the peach and say, hey, thanks a lot?
He used it for lesson purposes, Jim.
Oh, okay.
This is, like any true master, any true Zen master, you, as the master of whatnot, you think you would understand this. He ate that specifically to get the seed in the center so he could show him what's really happening with these ripples.
See, Sensei got his title on the internet.
It was like a home correspondence course.
Yeah.
Nice.
I agree. I actually, I got to admit, I'm totally with you. I chuckled too when he ate the thing. I'm like, well, But you got to think this priest was going to throw it and destroy it, so he certainly wasn't going to eat it. So
Now, the other thing I was laughing about when Clark uses the pit to show the ripples and compare how they're comparing it, how the that's what the vanishing looked like, the big ripple in the side. The first thought that popped in my head is, okay, does the priest go back into that fountain and pull out the peach? Because I know the fanboy in me would have pulled that peach out. I would have framed it, put it up on the wall, saying, "Superman ate this peach." Yeah.
Wait, now here's the question, though. Would you have thrown that on eBay, or would you have kept that forever?
Oh, God, no. That would have been a keepsake.
Yeah.
That would have been on the shelf. Yeah, that would have been, in a little plastic container and, little plaque saying, Superman ate this peach on this date.
Get out your camera and take a picture.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
With him holding it and smiling.
Superman handed him a diamond, and he threw that away.
Yeah, that would never have happened with me if I was a priest. Granted, priests take the vow of poverty, but there's still, I'm like, hey, there's exceptions to the rule. Come on, this is a diamond from Superman. I want to put this into a nice necklace.
I gotta say this. Wouldn't you be? I actually think this is more true than you think. If you were really in the presence of Superman, wouldn't you be like hyper self-conscious about, I don't want to do anything that would make me look like a fanboy? Oh. Wouldn't you be the other route? You've got a guy who's visiting. He's visited him twice now. So you're saying to yourself, Superman's becoming my buddy. Wouldn't you be like the other extreme where, like, on a level probably, I think you'd be even more creepy in the sense that you wouldn't want to do anything except look cool as possible, to the point where you'd look dorky because you were trying to be so cool?
Now when I say I'd get these,
he tossed a diamond into the pond.
I actually probably would have done something similar to that, but I sure as heck, after Superman flown away, gone back in there. It wouldn't have been at that time. I wouldn't have tried to pocket it while he was standing there. That was a cool thing for him to do, to toss it in there, and that was a whole neat thing. I would have gone back later that night.
Funny if there was a whole director's cut segment that showed that. We had this scene initially, and we thought it took away from the coolness of the priest. So
just didn't fit with the scene.
Right. That shows up in like every film where there's like this one sequence where you're like, boy, that would have totally wrecked his character.
Didn't flow with the tone of the scene.
But it's really funny.
Oh yeah.
Now, this isn't when you were talking in the last issue about the fact that Superman was taking a look at some of his previous actions and questioning whether or not he's actually making any progress or doing anything. He does something that I think, as every fanboy, we've said, why hasn't Superman done this? He took away all the weapons from two fighting factions, two different groups from two different nations, right. Two different philosophies and ideologies. And what happened was it just and I thought this was a really honest statement and a sad statement, but it felt very true to me on some of the disgusting things about humanity was the fact that all it would take would be one stone to get people to pick up, to be defiant on to the nerve of someone coming in and doing this. And I'm not saying I think Superman did the right thing. I'm like, yeah, you did the right thing, Superman. But in his case, he sees this as sparking off, which it did, further horrors.
I love this sequence where they're showing this war-torn country that, they never really name a country, but it's, probably the African, Middle Eastern type area, because they talk about it as like the birthplace of civilization, birthplace life and death of civilization, and it's that is typically considered that region. But you see just how the color shifting, because you have the brighter colored Supermans with this background of this desolate, very earth tony, very little color on the people, not a lot of facial details on some of these faces, just so they're just the nameless masses. And it's this really cool look at the darkness, and that is humanity. We are just, I've been constantly fascinated about just how much our capacity to hate is. And I love some of his dialogues that he was talking about how, he's always tried to show you that there's nothing to be afraid of, that your fear was in your mind, but you showed me that the greatest threat to humanity is in your hearts. And that was just like a powerful, powerful moment for Superman, because he's standing there, he has that classic classic, hoorah moment, crossed, he's hovering midair, crossed arms, crossed the chest. He's got the red eyes going like he's got the heat vision ready to fire at any second. And still, one little kid starts it all over again. They have no guns, so they're going to use rocks to beat each other to death. It was just a powerful, powerful moment of just thinking, what is going on in these people's head? How can they hate so much to have this enemy that you would do something like that? If I've been angry and mad at people, and there have been probably people out there that has probably really had this fury that I would want to kill them. But I think.
Forgive you.
I don't. Just kidding.
But I gotta think that if something like this, it would have calmed me. It would have stopped me. It would have been that snap to my psyche to say, "Hey, wake up! You don't want to do this." And it was just something wow for me.
But I thought it was important that it was a kid, because in this day and age where we see kids that are trained almost from birth to hate, to the point where they're willing to blow themselves up. This is something that's very real today and very contemporary, that kids are raised that this is their morality, that to give up in the face of anything, be willing to blow up a bus full of people, not to be willing to have this ultimate desire to, because there's these kids who, they're trained to just be walking bombs. And I thought it was important that it was a kid at this age. Look how they were molded. Look how this poor child was molded, that he would throw the rock in the face of all that it was a kid. And then because he did that, there's multiple reasons why that rock could have gone to his head. Mm-hmm. It could have been somebody else getting the idea from the kid. It could have been another kid. It could have been teenagers. It could have been adults who were like, oh, yeah, hey, look what that kid just did. We've got more weapons now. Let's keep going. The person could have been doing it because they wanted to keep the fight going ideologically. They could have been on the opposite side saying, wait a minute, if I throw a rock at this kid, maybe this guy won't do anything to me. Yeah. Because we just had a guy who took all of our weapons. What's he going to do because a kid threw a rock at him? That goes with that fear now of Superman. What is Superman going to do next? In their mentality, they'd have to be questioning, is this man going to hurt us? Is there something more there? So the fear could be another agent there as well. And we could go on and on talking about possibilities as what was running through their head at that moment. It felt so real to me that actually happened there, because there's literally hundreds of combinations of what could have precipitated this.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. And it was funny as we're seeing this, that type of stuff's going through my head. I'm also thinking, when Clark swoops in and takes the guns, I naturally just jumped into what if I was Superman? What if I had these powers? Would I have snatched away the guns? And it's weird. Whenever I think about what if I was Superman, my humanity in a way always twists it. It always ends up taking a darker turn. Like with this sequence, I'm thinking, yeah, you take away these guns from these warring factions. You swing back to America, you take away from the gangbangers, from the drug dealers. Then I'm like, okay, well, who do you take it away from? Where do you stop? What about the crooked politicians out there? Why don't I stop them? I'm Superman. I have the power. I can stop them. What's to determine who's the crooked politician? Who's not the crooked politician? Who's the person who just has his own ideology and is following his own beliefs, but maybe it's something I don't think is right? Where is the line? And every single time I think about having these powers, I always take it to the level where it shouldn't be. And the end of my thought process usually ends with me being the extreme dictator of the world because I have this power and I can do it. And I don't want to be the bad guy.
But even then, and that it just show the human. There were people who would rebel against that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the nature of humanity. It's the free will that we have. Sometimes it's our greatest strength. Other times it's our greatest weakness. We talked in the beginning about that artwork. The free-thinking humans are the ones that created that wonderful architecture. It's because people can go anywhere and have limitless possibilities that we can create great beauty. But we can also be just as creative in the sick reasons why we do dumb things. It's an interesting balance between the two. I liked with Superman that we got to see that while trying to do something that ultimately was for all the right reasons, with all the right intentions, it was the wrong move.
Yeah, I hate to say that he did make a mistake, but he did make it. There's a reason there is the war going on in that nation.
The most noble of reasons.
Yeah, he had the most. It's in the old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. There's tons of different cliches you could throw out for the moment, but it's one of those things that America, really gets, accused of throughout the world, that we're trying to stress our belief system, our feeling of what's right and wrong on other worlds. We're trying to make other countries be like another version of America. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of countries really hate us. And there's people who are, waging wars against our soldiers because of this belief that they have in their mind that we're trying to change them to make them us. We're trying to get rid of their beliefs, get rid of their ideology. When, I'd like to think that's not the overall intention of our activities, that we're actually truly trying to liberate and, provide people with the opportunity and hope to, self-govern, to actually live and grow and do as they want their society to go.
This was a language barrier, though. It was a miscommunication. He did everything with the best of intentions. They did not see that. And they didn't see that because of miscommunication. And that doesn't have to do with just verbal language. Mm-hmm. That can be physical language, mental language. They couldn't get into his head and know what he was, trying to do there. And that, his real goal was to bring them peace. You can't force that. And sometimes, no matter how much good you do, you can't force somebody to think a different way than they do. It's an unfortunate, side effect to free will and free thinking. It's a great thing too at times. I think it's why we have ultimately really great people, and we have really bad people, and we have people that fall somewhere in the middle. I think it is part of our society. But I love that exploration of this, because there wasn't a bit of that didn't feel real to me. That's the thing that really struck me with that. It was very powerful.
Yeah, it had that moments where, and this is definitely one of those issues where I went beyond the pages, and I really was just thinking about the world, and naturally I started thinking about the war in Iraq throughout all this, thinking how, in a way, when our forces first came in, we could have been seen as a quote unquote Superman type, where, what are they,
trying to play God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This so was not my first experience with this book. I've got to really say that, because when I read this monthly, I did not feel this way at all. And when we said we were going to do this, I thought this was going to be I thought our discussion was going to be more adversarial, where there's going to be segments where we really were, kind of butting heads on all this. Whereas I think we're having very deep, and I'm really enjoying this. I think I'm in awe at this moment, because on a personal level, I thought I was going to be, because you were quote unquote cryptic, I thought you were going to be doing some of this too. I know you weren't. You were Kool-Aid Man, but
yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How come I got a feeling?
Okay, now we're bordering on Randy Savage territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you did say the mega powers before, so it's I was thinking that when you said it too. Hogan and Savage, but I thought myself that this was going to be a discussion where I was talking about a lot of the things with this story that disconnected me from it. It was funny how I did connect with this story very deeply, and it wasn't. I gotta say, a lot of changes have happened in the last 24 hours with me in this book.
See, I'm actually surprised, because it was funny, because when I was first reading this, this one I connected on the first read through, and it was on the second read through that I really, really started getting into it more. But a lot of this personal connection. You read
this all together, though. Yeah. I read this over 12 months, or however. I don't know if there were any delays on this one. I don't even remember back at the time. But let's say 12 months. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt and say that it came out monthly and all that. Regardless of whether it did or it didn't, the artwork speaks for itself. It was worth whatever it took to get it out. This was a book that when I read it through initially, I really appreciated the art. I do think it's a story it reads so much better collected.
Yeah. But it's funny, because as I was reading this, I was just thinking, man, Sean must have been gushing about this.
I wasn't.
So I'm really shocked.
The artwork, I always was. That was a consistent part of it. There were always elements of the dialogue. I love Brian Azzarello's writing, and I do want to say that. I wonder if I walked into it initially, because 100 Bullets, when this came out, I was like, Brian Azzarello, 100 bullets. Ooh, I'm so excited for this. I don't think I was prepared for, because it's a very different story than I'm used to from Azzarello. And I think that might have been part of it as well. It was almost a good thing that I walked away from it for so long and then got the opportunity to reread it again this way in this format, because I do think that influenced it. I'm just being honest, because I think there might be other people who are in a very similar place with this, maybe that didn't reread it again because of it. If you've got these issues, I do encourage you to read this all together, and maybe you'll get a different experience from it. Like you said before, there's, if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's your cup, that's your right to feel that way.
Negative.
But I would encourage people who maybe felt the way I did with it to give this book a chance as a combined read. Read all 12 issues together if you've got the singles or whatever, because it did for me change a lot of this. Yeah. It took me 3 reads though.
Now, it was funny because with that whole diamond sequence that we talked about earlier, inside that there was also a cool moment where Father Leone kind of apologized to Clark for the humanity, but Clark, once again, isn't going to let him assume the responsibility of humanity. And, I kind of like that, considering what we were talking about earlier, how people want to blame God. So who do they blame? They blame the priest. Well, Clark isn't going to let him take the blame. And that was just, for me, that was another cool connection moment between the two of them, leading right up to when he does the diamond trick and he tosses the diamond in the water. And he's like, even a perfect stone makes a ripple, which again is just another really cool tie into Superman, who is the perfect stone, right, making the ripple, even making
the mistake.
Yeah, and it was like, I was just like, wow, there's just so many different.
How deep does that go?
Yeah. We see Mr. Orr's appearance for the first time here, and that is a character who actually did appear after this story. He had a few other appearances other than this. I always liked this character, and that was consistent through my initial reading of this. This was a very cool creation in this story. I don't know that he had any appearances prior to this. I thought he was original to this story, but I did, like, when he appeared after this, I really, really enjoyed seeing him. So this was really, the development of this character in this series really worked for me on a high level.
Yeah, and it wasn't as shocking for me of a cliffhanger as like some of the past issues, but it was a nice cliffhanger just seeing this guy. Now, I immediately recognized him from the countdown stuff with him and all that, but it was a cool thing just to see this, especially because his introduction isn't just him standing there. It's his introduction. He's looking through the scope, his binoculars, to seeing Clark holding that dead child, that same child who threw the initial rock at him, who initially started the second wave of the onslaught. Clark is holding his dead body, and it was just a powerful passion moment that it's breaking Clark's heart.
That's his ripple.
Yeah, that's his ripple. And it was just, wow, just a really just, oh man, what's going to happen now with this?
That cover on 206.
Oh, yeah.
With Equus.
Yeah, I tell you, I saw that and I was like, oh man, because I remember seeing him in Countdown, and I didn't know where he was coming from, but I remember the sequence in Countdown when he was talking about when he was fighting the Karate Kid, and he was saying how, hey, I went toe to toe with Superman, I can take you, kid, and I'm like, oh cool, I'm finally going to get to see that sequence. So saw that cover, I was chomping at the bit for this issue because that's just a powerful, I knew it was going to be a slobber knocker.
I love that this character of Equus is like a combination of like the best alien horror villains. You got like with the claws that are Wolverine, Freddy Krueger-ish. You got like, he looks kind of like the Predator monster, teeth like the alien. It's
take all the coolest things of all the nastiest monsters and just put it together.
It's that cyborg. It's like, what isn't he?
He's a love child gone wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see a whole lot of love there at all. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I wasn't going to go there, but
wow. A love child gone wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm doing my dance for that one. That's a good one.
So who was she, Jim?
Okay, score one for Norge. Nice.
Open door, drive right through it.
Beauty.
This baseball game Might as well dive right into that.
I know. And once again,
So the baseball game.
yeah. But once again, that inner dialogue starts off, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to fall for it this time. This can't be Clark. This is somebody else. And wrong. It was Clark this time. And I was like,
well, it's both.
Yeah.
It's both of them talking together, and I did like that aspect of it right now. I do like, and I agree with you on this, I do like that the two are very interchangeable, because that added the sense to me, and it was something that I liked on this series, that there was a reason that Clark connected with this guy. There is something, the two are very, very different people, but circumstances and experiences that each have had, and this event, have made the two connect on a very deep level. There is something comforting Clark finds in him, something comforting that he finds in Clark, and it's beyond the fact that he's Superman. There is something that the two are connecting with, and I bet if you've asked the two, they probably couldn't entirely put their finger on it. But there is something that's there that makes the two compadres, so to speak. I like that. I liked that feeling. I agree with what you said in the beginning. It does make this story accessible, because we all want to feel, I want to feel I could have this conversation with Superman and be half as cool as this guy is with it. I liked it. It was just a wonderful, wonderful moment. And I think circumstances are what is making him handle this so well, because he's opening up and being himself because Clark is. Clark's letting his guard down and being himself with this guy because he needs to, and I think that's enabling this relationship to operate in a way that not every person who encounters Superman could have this.
And I liked how we're opening up in the baseball game. This is, the American pastime, and it's just that, you see the life is going on. These people are cheering, but in the background you still see another memorial to someone who vanished right there at a ball game.
You also see the John 3:16.
Yeah, well, John 3:16 is always at every sporting event.
Yeah.
You'll always see that sign somewhere in the
I like
stands.
the tiny details, though.
Yeah.
And then the sleeper posters there again, right down there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I didn't know about the series or any of that.
That was an Ed Brubaker Wildstorm. I believe I'm almost positive it was a Wildstorm series. I read it ages ago. It's really good. It's being collected. I'm almost 110% sure it's a Wildstorm series by Brubaker. That it is being collected again. It was
Cool.
It was actually a series. There was more than one mini series, and they've been recollected recently. Please, anybody, feel free to call in or email and correct me. Call in especially if I'm wrong on it.
Yeah.
But
Now,
I'm almost positive that's what that's representing.
Now, I like throughout this dialogue, we see that Clark it's not just a crisis of faith for him, it's a crisis of who he is. He's questioning whether he even has the capacity to love. And that, for me, was a very realistic moment. It's a very human moment. He's just had his complete life rocked to its foundation, to its very core. So naturally, there's going to be not only just the doubts of who he is, there's going to be doubts of what is he? Where is that coming from? And I liked how he kind of expressed this. He's like, I have had a wife, but is what I feel for her love or what I think love is? It's that whole doubting of, and it goes beyond just doubting who he is. It's now we're getting into his emotions. Is he human? It's that separation of the Kryptonian from the human. Yeah, he has no physiological part of him that's human, but he is the son of Jonathan and Martha Kent, and that's always been the strength of Superman. Well, he's now losing that strength because his tether.
He's also
is
questioning
gone.
whether or not he's ever had it.
Right, and it's
So I mean, it's deeper than because we all make mistakes in our life, and we do things in our life where we start to question ourselves and the path that we're on. And you can see clear moments where you divert and just say, what led me on this path, and can I get off of this path? But you don't go back. I mean, this guy's questioning whether or not he ever even had love, what he understood love, and is his concept with love even human? It's a very deep exploration of this character, and that's one of the things that especially last night when I was reading this, I've got to say his dialogue connected with me on a level that it never did before, where I really felt like, wow, this really is Superman. Because I will say my major issue with this story was I really felt like, I'm like, is this Superman? I mean, yeah. I don't know, and his behavior and things like that was throwing me off. And I've got to say, I'm of the camp right now. It totally is. I understand why he's where he's at. There's something that just clicked for me. I also want to talk about the outline in this one, something I noticed in this particular outline that I noticed it in the other ones, but this one being at a ball game, the respect that people in general had on this one, I liked how this was drawn, because this event that happened a year ago for them would have been huge, devastating, 9/11 level. And there's certain points where I think it does say something strong about our society that when those events happen, a certain, even your element that would do graffiti or would, whatever, they know to stay away from certain things. You know what I'm saying? I'm not insulting people who do graffiti or things like that. There's all kinds, I don't mean it that way. What I mean is I like this, when this is drawn here, this is an outline of a guy who vanished at the game. The family's been there. There's, a postcard or, a picture from Dad. Johnny, you're the finest. Love, Mom, Dad. Pictures of him, in memory of him. So these are obviously people who have put remembrances. And wow, that pictures and things are respected like any shrine.
Yeah.
And this is at a ball field. So you think about how many people are in that stadium at just this game. How many games have occurred in that year at that stadium? And that's untouched, other than the people who put respectful remembrances there. That says a lot, and I think it's powerful. I also think it's very true, though, because I think that there's a line that people won't, when something that happens, we look at what happened with the outpouring with 9/11. I do think devastating worldwide situations like this would make people have a certain level of respect.
Actually, I got a great example of this in Las Vegas, the New York Hotel. When 9/11 happened, there's right at the on street level of Las Vegas, you have the Statue of Liberty there. There's two what looks to be like boats, harbor boats in the water that's surrounding the statue. It's right by the casino, and it's a nice thing. But when 9/11 happened, people started putting like memorials and little tokens, and it was like signatures on shirts of remembering of different people lost, of firefighters lost, of police officers lost, and it became this shrine and memorial to fallen police and fire. And it was this cool thing because it was on all the fencing. There was this fencing that surrounded, and no one was messing with it. People weren't taking down the shirts. People weren't doing anything to it. They were respecting that monument. And eventually the hotel actually built like plaque and framework and under glass and put the stuff there, and it's there still. It's a constant memorial of a we will never forget type thing. And then it was funny. I remember first time when I was in Vegas and we saw this, it was just like wow, and we were shocked that people wouldn't have messed with this because we weren't there right after 9/11. I was first in Vegas a couple years after 9/11 had occurred, so this thing had been up there for a while, and people were, respectful of this. And it kind of is one of those things I was like, yeah, this is a sign that humanity does have a chance, that there is some good out there, that we're not all complete garbage and filth.
Good point. Yeah, that really is a good point. And it does tie it. I think it was something that I noticed from this particular segment that I thought was pretty deep. It's funny how a couple panels in a comic will gauge such an emotional reaction connection to all of this.
Yeah, I know, and it's it's weird because as we started getting into this issue, we start seeing more about why Clark was doing the disarming, and we start learning about just the ambition of evil people, and what is the definition of evil, what is who is right, who is wrong in this. And this was something that another just really delved into it, because we start seeing Clark just disarmed an entire army, so there's going to be people who will take advantage of that, and that General Knox and his quote-unquote revolutionaries moving in, taking advantage of the situation. And it's funny because on one hand, I'm like, okay, I know this guy is going to be the corrupt general who takes in control and takes power. On the other hand, I'm like, man, that's a pretty smart idea. He's moving in. Superman did a lot of his grunt work for him.
Like, hey, you don't have any weapons, so I'm just going to take you over.
Exactly. That was just, I like that. I was like, on one hand, I'm disgusted by him because I know he's just this monster. On the other hand, I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good smart move there, buddy.
I was ready at this stage for a big battle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun.
With some action.
Yeah. It's.
Yeah.
That wasn't, I'm not saying that, because we've gotten that in smaller segments, with the stuff that he did where he took the weapons and things like that. But at this point, I was really ready. Equus was, to me, a welcome addition to this story because I was so ready to see a big knockdown throwdown. And I was glad that finally started to come at this point.
Yeah, and I liked how we're in very short blips, we learned how nasty of a creature that Equus is. Not only just openly just slaughtering people, he has that sick, perverse sense of humor. And if I'm calling it a perverse sense of humor, it's pretty nasty. As he's talking to Knox about, I've laid out the red carpet for you. And the carpet is blood trail that leads right up to the palace doors. I was just like, ooh, this is going to be a good fight between him and Clark.
I like that Equus can draw Superman's blood.
Is it because he's got magic in there? Is it because he's that hitting with that much force? That was something I always wondered with him.
I don't know.
I thought maybe you had an idea.
No, I guess I took it that he's just that powerful. We see that Kryptonians can do this to Clark.
Well, that's hidden with power. That's why
Well, that's what I thought was going on here. I mean,
they made a Kryptonian level of power punch.
Well, I don't know that it was even it was power along with just the sheer sharpness of the blades. It's really interesting what they've done with this guy and how they created him. I do agree with you that there's a certain level of magic probably have to be present. Mm-hmm. Except Clark's not completely vulnerable to him, so I don't know if that's even the right answer. You know what I mean? Because Clark can take him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Clark,
definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if I don't take it that Clark's totally vulnerable to this guy. So I don't know if magic's the answer. I just think that it's just a way to show that he's just that bad.
Yeah, and I agree because
their surface.
Well, I think it lends a certain credibility to him.
I think so too.
That he can draw his blood. I mean, because I'm honestly, I don't know how is this like the first time that we've seen this character was in.
I think so.
This storyline.
I'm almost.
So any guy comes along and you were supposed to take him seriously, but unless he draws Superman's blood, we don't care.
They're surface level. Mm-hmm. When he does it, it's not like
it's not a deep bruise, and he's like
he's gutting Superman or anything like that. It's proving that he can. His hits do matter.
He can hurt him.
Yes.
Yeah, and now I'm complete agreement with you about how I was really looking forward to the fight, but then once we get a couple punches traded and Knox has him stand down, I was like, oh, this is political intrigue. I love that in New Krypton, and we're seeing that in here, and I was just like, yes, this is not just going to be, we knew from the beginning this wasn't just going to be a bland. We knew this was going to have multiple layers and levels to it, and that was something I really cheered, because we're seeing Knox may not have been elected official. He may not have been the traditional way we would want to see it, but he is the government of the people. He was chosen by the people. He is now the quote-unquote legitimate authority in this company.
Whether he was chosen by the people or not, he is now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see, and how do you dispute that? The people want him. And that puts Clark, I love that there is a complication to being Superman. And that Superman, when he realizes that what he thought was right there's a gray area there, and he has to turn it around and go, wait a minute, this is who the people want. I've got to respect that. And, he had to face that with Luthor.
Yeah.
Luthor was the elected president of the United States, and he had to, at those moments, he had to make some decisions when it came to Lex Luthor with that. I always liked that when Luthor was the president of the United States, that Superman had to realize there were moments when Lex really was doing some good things for our country. And this explores that similarly, where he's...
Yeah. Well, Superman came to the country to stop a war, and the war is stopped now. We're seeing that. This is... And I liked how Superman's like, hey, what can I do to help? That was a real Superman moment, but we later learned it wasn't just to help out people. He did have that side motive. He wanted to be in the area to see what's going to happen with Knox. He was basically kind of like an infiltration of it. He's doing all the great good. He's putting out the fires. He's saving anybody he can save. Why? Because he's Superman. But he is using that super hearing. He is using what he knows about just humanity and just the darkness. He knows some bad stuff's about to go down in that country. So he wants to be present to try to stop it from actually getting worse.
And that's the same kind of thing that's going on. I know you mentioned New Krypton. That's the same kind of thing that's going on right now. Where he knows something's up. He doesn't know what, but he just goes along with it to find out what exactly it is. He's just biding his time.
And finds surprises along the way, though, because he's finding that with Labor Guild, for example, is a great example of where there's something that Clark didn't even know about how Krypton operates and its class system and, the inequalities that are going on there and how he's, what his idea, because of his human upbringing, how his ideas are influencing how he views that and what he considers right or wrong there.
Right.
That type of complications, what I'm really loving about Superman right now in the comics is seeing that he has to deal with that type of political intrigue. It's cool. It's great stuff to see that it's not easy to be Superman. It's funny, when you originally read Superman, you see his powers and everything like that, you can't help but say, wow, wouldn't that be cool? But the responsibility that this man has and the 24/7 nature of being Superman.
Right.
He was in bed with his wife, okay?
Yeah.
That would be, to me, that's sacred time. And I'm not talking about anything other than just sleeping. He wasn't, but even so, that would be what his downtime. He doesn't have an on the clock, off the clock. He's always on. That type of responsibility, it takes a very powerful personality to do that. Even when you make mistakes, to keep going. That is something that's inspirational about Superman. He keeps going regardless. There's a number of things in this book, in just this book, that have happened that in my eyes could cause Superman to quit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say, I was going to say a lesser person. I think a normal person would just say, you know what, this isn't for me. I need to, I've done some good. And I need a break. I need to walk away for a while, even just to take a break. I'm not even saying walk away, to take a break where, I need to take a couple of weeks off to regroup or anything like that. This man can't do that. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting to see that exploration of him here, because it did make me see him in a different way. And just this always on with him. I think that's why I was a lot more, I don't even want to say forgiving, a lot more understanding of him in the third read through, and where I was just kind of like in awe of how is this man even still going mentally.
Yeah, it's with great power comes great responsibility, so you have to.
But that's a good comparison though, because it is something that's explored in the best Spider-Man stories as well, where you get to see, and I think that's where diehard Spider-Man fans, you get my favorite Spider-Man stories are those ones where what is making Spidey get up? How is he delivering another punch? Dude's really hurting. I've seen there's been issues of Spidey where Spidey's got a sling on an arm and dude's still going. So that's a great example though of these heroes that are inspirational to us. I think it's because we all have days like this where, to go to work, to do what we need to do is very hard to do. But I think inspirational stories remind you that you need to keep going and you need to do that no matter what. This is cool.
Yeah, and I liked when they're dealing with between Clark and Father Leone, and it was one thing that it was, I think, for the first time ever reading a Superman story, I kind of questioned, and I kind of doubted maybe a little bit, because Clark is kind of being callous when he's saying, I do what I always do. I cleaned up your mess you've made. And when Leone calls him out on it, Clark says he's just kind of teasing him to see if Leone was missing. But I do have to admit, for a second there, I did hesitate in believing it. Granted, this is Superman. He doesn't lie, but... Go on.
Yeah, no. And the way that he was saying it, he's obviously talking to Father Leone, and he's like, I did what I could. What I always do. I cleaned up the mess you'd made. And there's a specific, the mess you'd made. Like he's talking to him, almost saying, hey, you're partly responsible for it. And, I can hear him saying it to him, in my mind. And for Father Leone to come out and say, well, that's a pretty callous way to phrase what you did, to blame it on everyone and not just the people directly involved. So, yeah, I could see where I didn't quite believe him.
Yeah, it was weird because I felt I felt funny not completely trusting everything Superman said. Because this is Superman. He doesn't lie, cheat, or steal, nor does he tolerate those around him.
Is some of that, why, I guess, on some level, is he just talking to Father Leone, or is part of it Tim talking to himself? Think about the times he said this in this story. He made a mistake here.
Yeah.
And it could be taken on that. I'm not saying that it is as simple as, I'm saying that I think that you can read his answer. And there is, one of the things I really liked, I don't know if this is in the trades or not, Brian Azzarello has this story, there's lots of portions of it where things that are said and things that are done are left deliberately open-ended to make us think. And we're supposed to make our own interpretations. I'm wondering if this isn't one of them, because it is funny that Clark made mistakes here. He made mistakes in the time with the guns and things like that. Who made the mess here? And I don't think there is a cut and dry, simple answer to that. Some of it might be him talking to himself there.
It's kind of one of those, Clark, you said that out loud.
Yeah, I don't think it's simple.
Oh, did I say that out loud?
Who is you, Clark? You know, and that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I don't think it's a clean cut and dry answer.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's one of those moments that you sit there and you read through a couple times, and it's just because
he's carrying a lot of guilt right now, Clark, and that is an interesting thing that I'm connecting with this time, and I really liked that, and I think that has made this story more endearing to me, was to kind of see a humanity to Clark, and yet I still feel like he's Superman, which is something I don't know why I never got it before that read-through, but it is something here where my respect level for him is back in this story. I don't know what the perspective change is for me, but it is that moments like that you'd think where he's blaming himself, I wouldn't feel that way, but no, it actually does, because I don't feel he's necessarily just pointing the finger at the priest. He's kind of talking about himself too.
There they are, all alone, except for that old character.
Yeah, and one of the things I really digged about another part in this little sequencing, here Clark is questioning, why he does what he does. Is he doing it because he just has the power to do it, or maybe it's out of love? And I love how Leone threw that in there, nice tie back
at him.
Yeah, that was a really cool moments. It's once again I said, to be a good guidance, to be a good shepherd, or however you want to think of them as, you have to be able to listen. And I love that we're seeing there is that man in there who knows what he's doing. It was kind of a little hoorah moment for me, and not my traditional hoorah moments that are always dun da da kind of moments. This was just like a yes, all right. I mentioned earlier how I was glad to see Clark stuck around to clean up the country. And it wasn't just about, cleaning up, doing what's right, doing the Superman thing. It was to keep an eye on Knox. And by doing this, he learns about, that everything there isn't really that kosher. And Knox has the device that caused the vanishing. And, to Knox, this isn't a device, it's a weapon. And Knox wants to keep it because, it's one, his country. It's a product of his country, and two, he wants to assure that it's not used against him. And it was just a really cool, once again, political moments. Is Clark going to let him keep that? Is he not going to? Is he just going to step in and say, "I am Superman. I'm taking this from you"? I was reading this, going, "Yeah, this is going to be a cool, kind of cool moment." But it's, it's not even just that though. Because that wasn't the stickler to this scene. This was just the beginning, the introduction to another really just cool cliffhanger ending. Because as Clark and Knox are having this discussion, as they're talking about who's the rightful entity to control this, and Clark's like, no, you're not going to get it. We get over the call that Equus is with the king. And that things are about to get nasty.
I like that it's explained later why Clark doesn't recognize this.
Yes.
Because this sequence with Knox technically takes place before the first issue of this series. Technically. Because this is all flashback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do like that it is explained later in the story why Clark doesn't recognize this. And that eventually later, when he does realize
what it is, he's like, ooh, wait a minute.
It adds a very deep level to this whole thing. And you have to wonder if subconsciously, though, maybe Clark did. How deeply can you erase something from your mind? sometimes there can be hidden guilt. And that's why I think this story started to work for me too. Hidden guilt that we sometimes have, and not even maybe necessarily knowing why, but subconsciously your mind is telling you should feel bad about this.
Yeah.
It's the repressed memories that people have. You have a traumatic experience, or you have something horrific that you've witnessed, and your mind blocks it. But there's still on the subconscious level. There's still that whether it's in the horrible dreams you're having and you don't know why, or maybe as you approach something you always stay away from it, and you don't know why. You have that uncomfortableness. You have that fear. And it could be very easily the same thing with Clark, having that connection, having that tie. He knows what this thing is. He knows what his true connection to it is, but he doesn't know. It's the back of the mind. It's the subconscious, the id and whatnot, just telling him.
You just blurt that out anywhere you can now.
It fits. The id and whatnot, It's the whole...
Well, and there's that subconscious, the id and whatnot, that is like drawing him to that region and knowing that he has to do something about this, that there's something there that he needs to see possibly, and what is it that's drawing him to that region of the world, knowing that there's something there that he needs to fix.
Knox's need, you're really right about that. His need to have this weapon, to hold on to it. There's a lot of reasons why that works. Even if Knox isn't going to use it as a weapon, there would be the technology in it. What can I build to protect myself from further attack? How could I maybe use the technology to make a different weapon to protect ourselves? Then there's the possibility that Knox wants to use this for yet a more sinister purpose. We don't know. It's really hard. I like that Knox, you can't help but feel that there is a certain sense of right to Knox, which happens oftentimes politically, yet you can't help but say, I know that if we really got down to a political debate, because we're from different cultures and all that, we would have some serious issues we disagree about as well. I like that about him, though, that he's not all cut and dry. Like, he's not the sinister evil villain, that there's parts to him where you can really feel like this is an intelligent man who would probably see that he has a lot of good ideas, and then there's that certain road where you hit that wall. There's that wall.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, this is where we're going to completely disagree and maybe severely disagree. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some stuff that just, by our sensibility and our a feeling of right and wrong, we're going to completely butt heads on. And it's
his experiences, certainly drive that.
And what his dealings and how to deal with the people in the region, how to deal with what they're used to. How when Clark flew in and took away the guns, there was fear in their eyes over what's he going to do now to us. Whereas if Knox had been Knox was dealing with it. His solution was, it's a bloodbath going at war and all that. He looks at it differently. They look at Knox differently than they look at Superman. Superman thinks he's doing this mission of peace by taking away the guns. No, he just escalated the fight. And it's, can we use our judgment, our moral structure in their society? Can we say, no, don't do that, do this, because this is the right thing? Well, it's the right thing for us, but is it the right thing for them? And I keep with this issue, I kept going back to just everything that's going on, in Iraq and the Middle East. And, do they want the free elections? Do they want, our presence there? Are we actually helping them? Are we not helping them? Is it, what is going on over there? There's a lot of it kept ringing in my head just as this issue's going on and as we're seeing more and more of this country. And I love the fact that we are able to tie this, a modern, present, everyday thing into this comic book. And it was just something I was gushing about as I was reading. And that's why when you guys were questioning just, whether I was, being sneaky or whether I liked or disliked, I was like, man, just look at this story. This is a kind of story that I, was just eating up as I'm reading it, just pulling me deeper and deeper into this whole region and this mythos and just re-questioning the mythos of Superman. And it was just like, I was like, wow, this is awesome that they're doing this, that it is, and it made sense for me that Azzarello would do something like this. He wouldn't look at the traditional Superman story. I love traditional Superman stories. I love Jeff Johns' dun-da-da Superman stories. But this here, this intrigue, this a little bit darker side, whether, and Clark's not intending it, but it's happening that way, and what's going to happen? It's the best laid plans of mice and men type, story getting tied into Superman. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
It's funny. I think the reason why I thought that possibility was there, because I thought it was either you pulling legs again, like you did with Watchmen way back when, or you generally had that feeling. It was my own personal experience with this that opened up the possibility. Because I say on the show, and I kind of misrepresent myself when I say that I'm a Batman guy, not a Superman guy. That's not true. Since I was a kid, I grew up watching Super Friends. I loved Superman. Batman is more my preference of the two. But, I've had Superman comics, DC Comics Presents as a kid. I used to read those like crazy. Superman and Muhammad Ali, I remember having that big oversized book. So the Superman films when they came out were just some of my favorite of all time. So I've loved Superman, adored Superman. When Byrne's Man of Steel came out, I remember it was the months in between those issues. It was seemed forever. So this is a character who I really do, when he's written very well, I love Superman. This story, I think because I had such a weird experience with it, it opened up that possibility to me that maybe you had the same thing. I don't know. So it was interesting. It is. I'm totally seeing why you're gushing about it now and all that, but
yeah, but the ending, yeah.
The cliffhangers, I want to say something about the cliffhangers in general. When you talked about the cliffhanger last issue, how it was our introduction to Orr, and it wasn't I liked that they didn't feel like they had to have one of these type of cliffhangers in every issue. It was a cool mystery to Orr, but it wasn't you're death-defying. This one fits. It so totally fits that there's, the gunfire, Iku saying, thought you might like to hear this, and Superman rushing off, and you not knowing, is he going to make it there in time, and what's really happening there. I liked that they didn't feel like they had to do that every single issue. It kind of, the story led to that versus it being forced.
Right. And
it was something I appreciated.
And definitely just you're talking about just, I was just chomping at this one. This was another one of those cliffhangers where had I been reading this monthly, I would have been miffed because I'm like, oh no, because that was just a cool sequence. He was grabbing the M60. I thought you'd like to hear this. And like, oh, can he do it? Is he faster than a speeding bullet?
That cover for 207 is plenty sharp.
Yeah, that's another one of those great, teaser covers that we're seeing it. That right there is telling you, okay, time for, Superman equals round 2. So
I like that the cuts
6.
to Superman's, not only to his cape, but to the Superman symbol. The damage that you see on Superman is something that's consistent with what we've seen in their previous battle. That you know that Iquus can actually do this.
Yeah, he can.
So that actually makes it even more powerful. And I love Orr sitting in the background. It makes you wonder, okay, how does he play into all this?
The opening, though, with that is 672 miles per hour. That's the speed of a bullet fired from an M60. It's been said that I'm faster than a speeding bullet, and I am. But being faster than a speeding bullet is not fast enough. And I was just like, sometimes. Yeah. I was just like, oh, man, that was just... My heart broke for Clark at that moment, just as he's just getting there and he just misses the bullets. The way that art was set up, you have the people with the
point of view with the bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And his sense of perception.
Yeah.
Being greater than ours with his telescopic vision and all that. He sees details in those events that most normal onlookers wouldn't see. He hears details on that. The screams, the bullets hitting people. It really is something that's very powerful about this character, that his perception of these events and his disgust over them is magnified on a level that we don't understand and we never can.
Now, I do have a little nitpick thing, and I do have to make it. Speed of sound is 761 miles per hour. And most bullets are designed so that they will exceed the speed of sound. And really to determine the speed, you would have to actually know what load they use, and the load of the round is going to vary on the speed. But the standard load for an M60 would put it around 1,000 to 1,500 miles per hour, not 672 miles per hour. So little thing I know, but
Wow.
Dude, you just killed it for.
Wow.
The sick thing is, as soon as I read that sequence, I loved that, and everything I was saying about this, the emotional side.
No, wait. Did you know that off the top of your head? Or
No,
did you look that up?
I knew
You looked it up.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I knew the speed of sound, and I'm like, wait. When I saw the number, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not faster than the speed of sound. It should be over speed. I didn't know the actual speed of the M60, so I actually hopped online. I was, getting comparisons on the standard load and with the M60 based on what mods and various whatnots that can be done to the gun and alter it to increase cycle rate and what type of round is it firing? Is it firing to special?
Yeah, but is it possible that this M60 is firing at that rate?
No, 1,000 is about the lowest because that was under the speed of sound. Because sound is 761, so that was firing under the speed of sound, and the M60 isn't a subsonic gun. And that's part of the reason why if you see like in the movies where they're firing blanks, or if you've ever heard a blank gun, it's not as loud as the actual firing because you still have that bullet traveling out of the barrel at the speed of sound. Now,
what about a defective M60?
That's not a defective M60.
How do you know? Yeah. How do you know?
Because I can tell.
How can you tell?
Because I am the
He's
sensei
a
of what?
sensei.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you're a moron. Wow. So there's absolutely no way this gun could actually fire it. Well, he is making a general statement, though, about M60s.
Yeah, I am making a general statement, and
no, he is.
No, no, I don't know. Is he making a general statement, or is he?
He said right here, 672 miles per hour. That's the speed of a bullet fired from an M60.
Right.
He didn't say from that M60. He said from an M60. So he's making a general statement about M60s.
But see, the M60 wouldn't be that low of speed.
Are you not listening to me? I'm backing you up.
Oh, okay.
And you're trying to argue with me.
Oh, cool. You're backing me up. I'm so used to you not backing me up. So this is a new experience for me.
You're trying to tell me I'm wrong for backing you up.
Don't back me up.
Yeah. You're right, Jim. I'm wrong for backing you up. No, I was trying to find a way to rationalize it in the story, to try and say, is there something different about this particular M60? Is there something that would make this gun operate differently? So I'm looking back at the dialogue, and Superman is making a generalization about M60s in general.
Right.
So I'm backing you up. Right. You're right.
Okay, yeah, and right now there's somebody listening saying, enough about the M60, move on.
Yeah, you have to put that in the show notes. Lengthy discussion
about the M60 light machine gun. Yes.
Yes. What's an M60 light machine gun?
That's what the M60 is.
Why is it called?
It's considered a light machine gun.
That doesn't look light.
Well, it's okay. A light machine gun considered because it's like an anti-personnel. It's not the heavy machine gun like a 50 cal or a 30 cal or something like that. Those are the heavier machine guns. That's it. Technically, is classified.
That's a baby gun. You're saying.
No. It's a very universal.
It fits in the purse. It's one of those, just in case.
it's a nice, appropriate noun.
Really?
Yeah.
Fits in your purse too, Jim.
He calls it a fanny pack.
Yeah. It's my con bag. It's my con bag. I got it at Mid Ohio Con. That's
Equus.
Yes. Superman Equus round 2.
Yeah.
That, just talk about just stunning moments. And, it was one of those things where, he's just hooping and hollering, just loving just a nasty, tough, gonna kick your butt Superman type of attitude that he had. And it was just, it was something I was just like, yes, I want to see this. I want to see this fight sequence. And I gotta tell you, I was really, really just enjoyed this. This was, one of those things where after reading it, I reread it again just to see it because you see him sketching, drawing the line in the sand and just saying, this is it. It's on now. No discussion, no political, nature. This was going to be a fight.
What Equus's glasses frames go up his nose? Look at that. His glasses frame. Isn't that his frames for his glasses? They're going up his nose.
I don't think it's a frame to his glasses. I think that's just...
Well, it's a frame. Look, the glass is attached to it right there, and that wraps around. It goes right up his nose. Why'd they go up? Is that because he doesn't have ears?
I don't think he has ears.
Okay.
Maybe
so where else would you put them?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
All right.
Because
it does. It's the frame. Look, it goes all around his head, and it goes up his nose.
To be honest, I never noticed that before.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
It explains why he's mad. I would be too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's people who have the piercings and the
it really ruins the look
in the nose. You know,
it ruins the look because he looks cool and all that, but then
you ever see that person that has their nose pierced, has their ear pierced, and then has the chain going from the nose ring to the earring?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, maybe it's that.
He's being trendy.
Yes.
It's a fashion statement.
Really? Yeah.
And his line there really fits with the trendy thing.
Wow.
Take breath, superstar.
Yeah. I love the sand comment.
Yes.
You know, it's that's what's in his head. It's a cool fight. It actually is a very cool fight. I was glad to see multiple battles with this because it is a character. When you introduce a character like Equus and you take all the time to develop this character, I like that Superman learned from the first battle and he takes him seriously. And I like that he goes for the things that can, so far what seems to hurt him is the claws. So that's what he goes after.
Yeah, and it's, something as simple as, kicking up the sand, uses the breath, then blasts it with the heat vision, encasing him in the glass. He busts out, and it was just back and forth. And it was just when Equus just starts getting that cocky attitude going, yeah, I got you. It's like, oh, okay, let me return the favor. Ripping the claws just off the body. I was just like, dang, that is a Superman. Ugh.
Yeah, it was very cool. And I like that he didn't do it to kill him. He did it to disarm him.
Right.
That it was clear he had to have used his X-ray vision at that point to have seen.
Yeah, it's connected to vital organs. It's not going to kill him. He knows that this is something that the guy could survive, but it's a defensive, offensive movement. It's going to protect him, but it's it's an attack on him, but it was more of a protection type movement. But, one of the things that this whole sequence adds, if he hadn't kicked up his breath, if he hadn't done that, we wouldn't have seen that massive killing field grave that Superman's revealed. And I was just like, wow, this
the offensive nature of that to him was very powerful.
That is just like, but it was just a really just cool segue that we see this massive scene. And we know Superman so well, we know how it's going to affect him. But then they go right back to Father Leone, just that whole kind of his connection. And we're now getting the final pieces as to why, Clark is feeling the way he's feeling. It's not just the war that started, the kid dying in his arms. It's this horrific event, this thing that he sees. So we're now seeing all this stuff that just built up and weighed on Clark's shoulders. And when I read that, it really made me really appreciate the earlier stuff that I had read about him, that feeling of him being off. Something like that would throw off anybody. I don't care if you are Superman. That is one of those events that just affects you to your core. And, seeing that, I was like, wow, this is layered on layered on layered storytelling that I absolutely love.
Is it layered?
Layered on top of layered.
Layered.
Sorry.
Give me a break,
I'm
man.
just being a putz. I am sorry.
Now, it was fun. I like, with Father Leone's definition, with his whole thing about evil, is like genius. It's a word to describe something that falls very short of the word itself. And that was, I was like, yeah, because, it's, what is the nature of evil? Is it evil because it's nasty, or is it evil by comparison to the good?
But I think he's trying to say like it's all encompassing, like genius. When you say the term genius, that means somebody who is totally impossibly smart. Meaning that a genius is somebody you would ask them anything and they know the answer to it, which what he's saying is that's not always the case. Yes, they're brilliant in certain areas, and yes, they know, tons and tons of things, but there's always something, and that keeps them from attaining that level that they're branded at. The same thing with evil. Great example would be Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
You could easily argue that Lex Luthor's been labeled evil very many times, but yet we've seen times where He can be a genius. He can be good. He can be, he's done things that would be considered good. So how evil is he? Is he totally evil? Is it that simple?
Is he pure evil? Is he partial evil?
Mm-hmm.
Is
there intention there?
Yeah.
There's times where he believes he's doing right by humanity. And is that intention in itself enough to take him off of I don't know. I like that he's basically hinting at the gray areas, that it's not that simple. And I would love to see what his scale looks like between evil and genius and evil and good. Probably genius and moronic would probably be the two little scales
genius
there.
And Jimmy Olsen.
Good and evil, All right.
Okay, bad joke.
Yeah,
Thank you for skipping
Jim
over
Stegall must die. I got Jimmy's back. Which Jimmy, though?
Well,
there's gray areas there.
No, there's not on this one. We know whose back you got. And whose back has the knife in it? Ugh,
I had your back with the M60.
Yeah, you did, and I completely misunderstood it. Because I figured it's Sean. He's got to be, going against me on this one. So maybe get ready for a fight.
Maybe you're misunderstanding me here. There's double meanings.
Yeah, okay. As Clark goes back to confront General Knox regarding those killing fields, this was once again one of those moments where I gotta say I like Knox in this. Yeah, he is the corrupt politician. Yes, he did execute people he felt was guilty of war crimes, but to him the deaths were swift. That killing field, that was the previous king. That's how he ruled. He ruled with fear, pulling people out.
But he's
of
not responsible for the people in the mass grave.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
That was the previous guy.
Right, he was responsible for the guys Equus was shooting.
Right.
That's what he was saying by those are the war criminals he killed. Those are the bad guys that he killed. He was giving them a swift death. Right. He wasn't making them suffer. Because in that mass grave there are people buried alive. That's just the way it goes with those things. It's not, it's torturing. It's,
But Superman's a lot of his rage towards Knox is not just the people who were gunned down by the M60.
Right. He's there about
he's assuming that he's responsible not only for them but the mass grave.
Right.
And it becomes an interesting gray area when he finds out that the people that were killed were the victims of the people that Knox took down.
Right.
So that becomes an interesting gray area. What is right? What is justice? What is not? Mm-hmm. And that sense of disgust there. And it would be like, what do you say there? Because Knox is wrong. I firmly believe Knox is wrong.
Agreed.
But the people who were murdered, and I mean the people who Knox killed, deserved punishment. And what is the right punishment in this country? That would be my gray area, because you're now on foreign soil. What is the law there? Well, the law is Knox. That becomes a hard thing to deal with when you're Superman, because you want to stand by what's right. And this is an American soil where he's used to what those laws are, and that in American soil, what Knox did's wrong. But on this soil,
is it wrong? What is the law of the land?
There's a morality, but then there's legal. What is lawful and what is moral are not necessarily. They're
not the same.
Yeah, and that becomes very tricky for Superman. I like that he didn't have an answer there, and I like that he didn't have an answer versus approving. If he approved of it, I would have had a problem. The fact that he doesn't have an answer means that Superman needs to think about that and sort that out like anybody would in that situation. And I'm sure in the end result would be Superman would say, morally, I cannot justify what Knox did. And I firmly believe that's what Superman would do. But I liked that at that moment it wasn't so simple.
Yeah, it's not. There is the touch of gray there. It's not the black or white. There is.
And how do you respond when that's the law of the land at this point? Because Knox is that law. It just doesn't.
A not so extreme example of that is every couple of years there's always like the news stories that come from Taiwan about Americans doing something wrong, and it's the caning punishment.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, that's horrific. He didn't do that bad thing. Why is he being punished like that?" No, that's the law of the land. He broke their law. He broke their rules. This is
in their country, broke their laws, has to pay their punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually looking for those countries because I was going to, after you butchered the Rolling Stones, I was going to get you a plane ticket.
Because that is criminal.
That is criminal,
yes. Hey, that was my tribute to them, man. It was out of respect and love.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
What do you do to somebody you hate?
Oh, man.
That's funny. This is a very deep story.
I know. It's one of those things where you just keep going and getting into it, and
It is what Azzarello said.
Yeah.
It is a story that there's multiple segments that can be interpreted a lot of ways. There's things that people say that can be interpreted different ways. Even Superman, like when Superman doesn't say something, like in that moment, it's very powerful because it leaves you to think about what's going on in Clark's head at that point in time. And I think you can go in a lot of different directions on that. I like that. It was something that I really particularly enjoyed in this sequence.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I really digged about Equus, he gets his claw ripped off. He's in the middle of that killing field. He just went toe to toe with Superman, and he lived to tell about it. Now, a lot of people would say, "Hey, that's a good for resume stuff for me." Not him. He's going to hunt down Superman. He's got to finish the fight they started. And I love the fact that Equus is like, okay, you ran away from the other fight. Let's finish it now. He had his chance of getting away, but he chose not to. But
it also shows how he's been altered.
Yeah.
Because whatever they did to him when they altered him has genetically put him in that place. I'm glad that we get to see later this process does mess with your head.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, Equus is an earlier version.
But I do question, though, how much it really did mess with his head. I think they didn't pick a Boy Scout, nice, honest person to be Equus. I think they started with the nastiest person they could find and then enhanced them. So I think we're getting an extreme version of it.
Oh, or even I was thinking some kind of criminal.
Mercenary?
So it was like in RoboCop 2. When they had to pick who was going to be the new RoboCop, they tried cops, they tried Marines, and they all couldn't handle it. So they went to that drug-dealing kingpin superstar nasty villain and said, "Hey, here you go. This is this new body and he loved it. He enjoyed the power that he was given." So it's probably, I'm going to say probably the same nature. They took some nasty person and said, "Hey, we're going to enhance you, make you this incredibly nasty, tough thing," and he probably welcomed the power and the might that it gave him.
Wow. Yeah. I like that Clark, throughout this whole process with the battle, isn't just concerned with beating Equus. He's concerned with learning what Equus is. What am I dealing with here? Is this human? Is it alien? Where did it come from? That makes sense with somebody who's a veteran with facing so many different enemies that knowledge is only going to help you to defeat your foe.
You want to know who and what you're up against, what they're capable of. That's classic combat 101. You don't want to go into a fight blind.
I like that he learns that the crocodilian skin cells they've got like self-healing to them. That type of stuff is really interesting to me, that he's just breaking down what have I got to deal with here, and also what kind of punishment can this guy take?
Yeah.
Because Clark has to be very concerned with that as well, being that he's Superman and the amount of pressure he can punch. We've learned in many different stories that Clark holds back all the time.
Yeah.
Except in the case of fighting a Kryptonian. It's very rare that Clark can fully let loose. Doomsday would be another great example of where Clark fully let loose, but we never see in a typical monthly Superman adventure, we don't typically see Superman use what he's actually capable of doing, because he's got to constantly hold back. And that type of restraint is something that also has to be respected about this character.
Yeah. And I liked how when he's scanning, he did see on the subatomic level, or just the base of what he was, is human. Because for that had just multiple levels of restrictions for him. One, because there was some human, there was life. That means Clark can't kill this. Clark can't completely destroy it. But two, if he was human, then therefore he is incapable of these inhumane and evil actions that we've seen throughout the book. But for me, the best was you think about humans, what the nastiness we're capable of. What happens when you back us up to the wall? We're going to get desperate. It's that fight or flight reaction, and we see that in him.
Especially one that's on synthetic steroids, adrenaline, and endorphins. I mean, these are things now that are pumping him and jacking him up. So you're dealing with a guy who's jacked up both physically and mentally. What is that doing to him?
Yeah, he's got the ultimate roid rage flying through him right now. And and he's up against the wall.
But not just the roids.
Yeah.
The adrenaline is
Yeah.
going. Adrenaline will affect that as well. Intense amounts of adrenaline. So you're combining these things. It's like the ultimate bad concoction
Yeah, it's
for self-control.
he needs anger management classes.
And what happens when somebody who's like that gets desperate?
Well, and we see it because not only does he grab Knox, but he activates the vanishing device. What rational person would activate that
something
thing?
like that.
Somebody who can't stand the idea of losing.
Yeah, or
In his case,
desperate.
But in his case, losing was not acceptable. And he really didn't fully get defeated by Superman. He did not submit. He did not surrender. He would not let him. He would rather go for a draw than take any chance that he could lose. And he saw the possibility being there and wouldn't let it happen. You know, he was at a point where he saw that I could lose here, and I'm not going to.
At desperate times, desperate measures. Boom. But it's funny because as they're Clark and Leone are talking about the second vanishing that happened. Just how people were able to deal with it better. People. It's not even because it had happened once again. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is something else. And for me, if I was living through this, I would first thought in my head would have been, okay, that first one wasn't the rapture. That wasn't end of days, because in the Bible it says there's only the one giant vanishing. It's not a second wave. So in this type of society, then I would have started shifting. Okay, is this a mad scientist thing? Is this a supervillain thing? And that's when I would have started really looking at the metahuman community, saying, hey, this is one of your guys' problems. What's going on here? And maybe people are thinking that because we talk about Clark saying he sees the fear in people who shouldn't be afraid of him. Maybe it is the everyday person are starting to look at the metahuman saying, hey, did you guys cause this? Is this something, if we have now two of them, maybe this wasn't natural. Maybe this wasn't an act of God. Maybe this was an act of one of you guys, once again messing things up.
That's interesting. I have to agree with you on that. That's a definite possibility.
Father Leone asks him if it's going to happen again. He says, do you believe me? And Father Leone's like, I believe in you. So, there's a possibility he's not quite convinced that he can do anything about it.
I also took that, though, as him seeing that there is a humanity to Superman. Saying that he believes in him is a way of saying, I have confidence that you are going to keep pressing on and to keep trying your best. But he also is seeing in this man that he's not perfect. It was a far cry from an angel that he saw, the godlike creature that he saw coming down from in the first issue. He's gotten to know him on a human level and to know that this guy's fallible, like any other person would be. Even though Superman does these things that put him on an insane level, and that he puts himself on this schedule 24/7 that just won't quit, and he, which is not humanly possible, what he does and how he keeps going. There is still a part of him that he's not perfect, and that part I like that he said that I believe in you, because that does say that I believe you are going to keep trying to do the right thing, but I don't believe that necessarily means that it has to work out. You know what I mean? And that is kind of, the distinction there is huge, and very real. And it just shows that he's trying to encourage Superman honestly.
Yeah.
Because he was doing that there. He was trying to give Clark what he needed, but to give it to him in a way, I think if he'd done anything less than that, Clark wouldn't have believed him.
Yeah, Clark, and we've seen that Clark can read, people by their expressions, and he knows the truth. So that was like I don't want to say it was a test, but in a way it was one of those testing moments where you really see what you're up against. There's like difference in people's personality. I had a friend of mine who in college was, into the whole theater thing, and they were doing the local productions and the college productions and whatnot. And I'd see a couple of their stuff they did, and sometimes it was good. Sometimes it was, okay, I'm here supporting my friend type thing. And on those moments when I was there supporting my friend and it wasn't the best of productions in the world, it was difficult to tell the person, hey, that wasn't the greatest play in the world. I'd look for the good stuff to talk about and just, did you like it? Well, hey, I thought that, that one scene in, the act 2 where, going back, that was a great, really, that was a powerful scene. And I couldn't bring myself to say, hey, that's bad. Whereas, like, other theater people, people who are like the performance type people would be more open to say, that wasn't terrible. That was bad. It's, it's that whole, who you are, can you just be the upfront and say, is it the right thing to say? Do you want to put the positive spin on it? Do you want it to be, you know what I'm saying?
There was like 400,000 people that had vanished at this point, right? Because there's 100,000 the first time, then 300,000 the second time. Am I right on that count? That's another thing, too, that would affect his judgment there. It's almost like he believes this might be bigger than Superman.
Yeah.
That Superman might truly believe that he's being honest in what he's saying, but just because you believe that someone's being honest in what they're saying doesn't mean that you believe that they can actually follow through in that.
Yeah.
So it's a very tough. You're right. There's a tough balance between what you should say in a situation.
Yeah.
And I believe he was being truthful there, though.
Oh, he definitely was being truthful.
But he could have lied and pushed it up a bit, or even spoke without thinking.
Yeah.
And just said, "Sure, I believe in you, Superman." And
yeah, right there. That would.
I don't think he's at that place, though.
No, they have that relationship. They have that friendship, that trust bond that has been forming over this time.
I also think what he's going through personally, though, would not let him.
Right.
Because he's going not just the crisis of faith, but his other issues that we find out about. I think that those elements make him the ideal confidant for Superman in this story.
By the way, the first vanishing was 1 million people.
Was it 1 million?
Mm-hmm.
So it's 1,300,000.
Yeah, I just looked it up.
So, because he was saying it wasn't as bad the first time, and it's...
Well, I think he was in reference to the shock.
Yeah, he does say that he's not speaking of numbers.
Right. It's not... It would be kind of along the lines if something in the capacity of 9/11 happened again.
Right.
Maybe not as many people were killed, but it's like something that we're kind of aware of now, and we know that it's in the back of our minds that it's a possibility. So
you're right. I would also argue too that with it being isolated, as we're talking about here, you got to wonder if that particular isolation on some level doesn't affect things. What I mean is, in the case of this situation, the fact that it happened once the first time, people might say, "Oh, what the freak occurrence." Even the people that were wondering if it could happen to them next or something like that, they haven't had verification that it could happen to them. Now they do.
Yeah.
Right.
That becomes a very interesting point. I like that. It would be worse this time because now this would cause, I would think, a deeper panic, more of a psychological impact on the people that are left behind. Gotta wonder what's going on to the people that vanished. I like that we don't know.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't show us what was going on, along the way, like they didn't have side panels that were showing them, where they were. I think that mystery remaining there was something. We were with Superman and the priest because, like them, we really don't know what's going on. And that added to, I think, the mystery level of it. It was an important choice, I think.
Yeah. Now, once again, another great ending with Orr. It's not a
beautiful visual ending,
beautiful visual, and it adds to that mystery of the guy as we have the burning Superman symbol in the ground, and he's just standing there. That's a great way to draw him in, and it's nice signal fire, if you will.
That's some nice work with a gas can too.
Yeah.
It's like what we've seen in the Daredevil movie and that type of thing. It does work well visually, though.
I was also thinking the Raven, the Crow.
Yeah, yeah.
They had a lot of the visuals where you'd see the Crow image. That kind of stuff.
You got to be really careful with a gas can to pull this off, though.
Yeah.
I think in order to really pull this off, you'd almost have to dig trenches.
Yeah, he probably did. Maybe you just
or put lines.
I mean, I think he's he's a military man, so he knows how to do that.
Right.
So, and then he calls it a flare.
Well, he's an enigma.
Yeah.
This guy. So I mean, I don't. He's obviously somebody who has a set of skills. Actually, I think of the movie Taken with Liam Neeson. I have a certain set of skills. Or is. I don't think we understand completely his training and how in depth his skills go, and he's on like an extreme level. Honestly, Orr is probably someone who's avoided being an Equus. But certainly would be a prime candidate because of his skills to be an Equus.
For me, it's funny because with him, I always see him as a Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
You don't know who he is, where he came from, but he's just a man of, he has certain special talents that are needed sometimes. And it's both times we've seen him have been in this, mysterious type, espionage CIA type mindset. And I was just like, I liked how they're bringing him about, and future usage of him was just really some stellar stuff.
I like that when Superman shows up, though, he would be offended because of the dead body there. There's a dead body sitting right there, this helicopter, and Superman's being called down. It's pretty clear that the dead body was made that way by Or. So,
well, the dead body's the king, the previous ruler.
Oh, so, it is.
So I don't know if that was or Equus got to him.
But he's there, and there's definitely an element where you're right. I didn't even take it that way. You're right. But Superman, especially being called to that spot, he's definitely offended by this.
Well, if that's where the body of where the king was, that would mean it's right by the killing field.
Right.
So he's pulling him back to that, nasty site.
Right, which would add to the offense.
Yeah.
Like, why are we meeting here? What is the point of this? You have something that belongs to my employers. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Especially considering what that weapon is. I keep forgetting that Clark doesn't know what this is.
Right.
Right.
That's the interesting part of this whole thing. He doesn't quite know what this is yet.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
Want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. Voicemails will be on next episode. As a matter of fact, our next episode is going to be all speeding bullets. We're going to come back to 4 tomorrow the week after that, so it's going to be on 174 that we're going to come back to that. There's so many things going on and so many great comics right now that I want to do what we did last time as well and split this up and do 1 week where we have current comics, another week where we go back to some of the older material. So I think this is kind of a nice balance during the month to make sure we stay up with all the great current things going on. A lot of stuff to talk about with Blackest Night since we've last discussed it. A lot of stuff to talk about Wednesday's comics, and I've got some Vertigo stuff I'd like to chat about. Just wonderful monthly titles. Too much to list at the moment, but next week is all speeding bullets. But as I said, the show voicemail line is 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. Any of the voicemails that we got, I'm going to have Jim here, and we're going to be chatting about voicemails next week as well. So definitely get some of those comments in there. Want to remind everyone our sponsors for this episode were DCBService.com and InstockTrades.com. DC Library, Shazam! The Monster Society of Evil hardcover, regularly $39.99, 50% off, only $19.99. InstockTrades.com has the DC Library Flash of Two Worlds hardcover. That's regularly $39.99, 37% off, only $25.19. So whether you're pre-ordering at DCBService.com or getting some trades that you missed or hardcovers that you missed at InstockTrades.com, there's deals for you to be checking out at our sponsors, so please consider supporting them. So it's great, whatever path that you want to go with those guys. And I want to thank them for supporting the show. I want to remind everybody about the Hero Initiative. That's heroinitiative.org. We got a handy-dandy link on ragingbullets.com that you can follow to click on that. And please consider donating to them. Also, please consider helping out John Ostrander. That's Comics Foresight. That's COMIX, the number 4, SIGHT.com. And there's a handy link right inside the show notes and right on our website, so please consider supporting that. Remember, he just recently had eye surgery, and there's a great chance to help out with those medical expenses. Remember that this is our chance to band together as a community and do something for one of our own, so please consider doing that. That's comicsforesight.com. And we will see you next week with Speeding Bullets.
Bye.